You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious. I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 568 for January 14th, 2024, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, as we officially make the turn to 2024.
I mean, I'm still thinking about 2023. I don't know about you.
As am I. It was a great year for film. I am excited for what the new year may bring. But I do want to start off by, I guess, to your point, Brendan, thinking about 2023 one last time, because this last week was utterly insane. It was one for the ages, one for the books. Not sure I'll forget it anytime soon.
It was a good year.
And in many ways, even as we are recording now, it really hasn't ended for me.
Oh, it literally hasn't ended, because what we did during our award show is we recorded over a pretty major award ceremony in the Film Critics Circle, right? The Golden Globes. We're doing the same thing tonight. The Critics' Choice Awards are happening right now, and we are choosing to talk about movies as opposed to watching an award ceremony. So like the fact of the matter is 2023 is still top of mind for a lot of people, and rightfully so, because there is a lot to celebrate.
Yep, it is very much top of mind, and you are right, although I wasn't even thinking about that, to be honest. But that is certainly a parallel. Mostly what I was referring to is that this last week was the InSession Film Awards. That's the ceremony most people are really excited about. That's what
most people being 4 people, about. Right? Those who partook in it.
It's been all the rage this last week.
I mean, yeah, from our perspective, it certainly has. I agree. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Of course, it is available if you want to go and check out the 2023 InSession Film Awards. You know, you can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, however you tune in. We do appreciate it. It's the biggest show we do each year. It obviously takes a lot of prep, a lot of work, a lot of editing. So we do really, truly appreciate everyone that tunes into the award show.
Yes.
It was great to have Ryan and Jay back on for that episode. Part 1 was a great time. Ryan, unfortunately, couldn't be there for part 2, but it was still great to have Jay there. And it was just a really fun way to celebrate 2023, one of the best years for movies in the InSession film era, as we talked about.
You would think for a year as stacked as 2023 and how many great films there have been, our lists for our top 10 of the year would have been a little bit more varied, but we almost all collectively had the same number 1. And even so, the only break in that was me by putting that film at number 2 instead of number 1. So, I mean, there was a lot to agree on at the very least.
For sure. And, and that's not something that's happened, I don't think, with the 4 of us that I can recall anyway.
No, we've come close a few times, but even so, that closeness has been maybe mostly separated by maybe one person having it at number 1, the other person having it at like number 4. Number 7, like it's been more broken up, to say the least. But there was more of a collective agreement this time around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it was a really great time, as I noted. It was memorable though for a couple of reasons, not just because we were celebrating a great year for film, but it was how this last week unfolded that made it all the more unforgettable. In the sense that we recorded the first part. We recorded part 1, as Brendan noted, during the Golden Globes, which, you know, I don't know if we would have chosen that normally, but the circumstances of the week called for it, and that's part of the equation here. So we had to record part 1 a week ago, last Sunday. Monday night, I was unavailable, as we somewhat talked about. We joked about this, I think for part 2, I believe it was.
We're movie nerds, but we're also sports fans.
I'm a huge Michigan fan, obviously, for those watching on YouTube. You can see.
You're going to be wearing that Go Blue shirt every time we do a podcast now for the next few weeks, aren't you?
I have all kinds of Michigan gear to begin with, and I've ordered a whole ton of national championship gear. So
Does Sam have
I
some
will be
too?
showing- Oh yeah, and the
I was gonna
baby as
say.
well.
Good man.
Yeah,
Good
we
man.
got the kiddos all new Michigan attire as well.
Good.
So yeah, the national championship threw a little bit of a wrench in the recording plans because we always do part 1 and part 2 back-to-back nights. And so, I mean, and that's what's so chaotic about it. For those that have listened, you know how long it is, you know how much goes into those shows. So we record them back-to-back nights. The other 3 gentlemen that are a part of it for me, they get a break afterwards, but I do not. I have to turn around and edit those shows on back-to-back days as well. So it's an almost overwhelming, but in a mostly great way. Like it's a lot of work. Like I know it's just a lot of effort to turn around and edit those as quickly as I can, because we try to get them out the next day.
Right.
And so it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of work. So there's part 1 this year. Then there's the national championship game. Then we went to record part 2. Huge storm hits the Northeast. So Brendan is knocked out.
I'm literally not. I'm no power whatsoever.
Yeah. Could not record Tuesday night. So then we had to turn around and record on Wednesday. As I noted, Ryan couldn't be there. So we were trying to be flexible and shift everything we could to make it work. In addition to that, Michigan's won the national championship. So I'm losing my mind, and my focus is on that as much as the InSession Film Awards, on top of my normal fatherly duties. And then this weekend, as I'm recovering from all of that, the Detroit Lions are in the biggest playoff game of the entire franchise's history. It's happening right now as well. So I'm ramping up for that. So
they have a chance.
They have a
chance. And this is the NFC wildcard playoffs that you're talking about. The Packers had a surprising win over the Cowboys. So there's a lot happening there for sure. But in a weird way, all of these things that led to the break between recording part 1 and part 2 was almost kind of serendipitous in a way, because having that break was actually kind of therapeutic. At least it was for me. Recording back to back is sometimes very tiring when you have all this content
daunting, for sure.
I think in a way it helped open our eyes that when we do this exercise again a year from now, when we celebrate 2024, having at least a day in between might be pretty nice. So we might even schedule it that way.
If you want to edit, maybe we can do that. I'm telling you what, from an editor's perspective, that gives me nightmares. But you are right though, like from a recording perspective, because it takes so much time to do. Yeah. To have that day in between, it does kind of give you a little bit of space to catch your breath, so to speak. Yeah. I very much do agree.
And refuel.
There,
yeah.
For sure. But that would prolong the editing process for me, and I don't know. I'd have to think about it. It might be helpful.
Think about it.
It wasn't this year, but that's because there was this huge game in between.
Oh, we had reasons this year. Yeah, we had no choice.
So maybe if I have a year to prep and figure out what that will look like from a pragmatic perspective.
You know what's going to happen? We say we have a year to prep. We think, oh, that's fine. We're going to get to the day. It's like, oh, we have 2 days until we record. We didn't think about this, did we?
Yeah, we won't think about it till the week of. Yeah. So.
Oh, in our 30s, we still know the art of procrastination.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it was just a chaotic week. It was really fun. One for the books, as I noted. Yeah. However, as Brendan alluded to, because we recorded during the Globes, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it. I mean, I don't know if we would have anyway, because it was the award show last week. So the entire time was dedicated to that, obviously. Right. We did release a Chasing the Gold episode. However, today, even as we're recording this. So if you want to check that out, I got together with Brian Rowe and Joey Gentili to talk about the Golden Globes and SAG and the DGA. So that's available if you want to go and hear that. However, Brendan hasn't had a chance to talk about it, and I certainly have some more thoughts. And since we recorded that Chasing the Gold episode, there's even more that's unfolded. We got nominations for the PGA, which is absolutely worth talking about. And as we're recording, Brendan noted earlier, Critics' Choice is also happening. So perhaps we can give some thoughts on that. So we'll start there. In the back half of the episode, though, we are transitioning to 2024. That is the beating heart of this episode. I do love this exercise, and this is maybe part of the chaos and part of the fun because we do this huge award show, and the very next episode is, hey, let's talk about our most anticipated movies of the year, which certainly involves some homework looking into what's all coming out, from what directors, who's
It's what
involved.
corporations do. It's what corporations do. They finished the year strong. They pulled in good numbers. Now what are we going to do next year?
Yeah, so we'll get to 2024, an interesting lineup for sure.
Yeah.
And I look forward to talking about that. So let's begin with all of the award stuff. Let's start with the Golden Globes. What did you think about this year's winners?
So I did go back and watch at least most of the winners and their respective speeches, and even some of Joe Coy's opening monologue, which
I avoided that like the plague.
It was pretty disastrous, I'll tell you. And the fact that we keep talking about it is kind of unfortunate for different reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but it did look like from a movie standpoint, as far as what was honored, what won, those who did win, and how they passionately thanked people who were worth thanking for their win. That at least looked like something I would have loved to see in the moment, because it actually looked very passionate and very loving. So at the same time, those that did go on to win major awards at the Globes, it continues to reinforce just how strong the nominees were in the first place. We talked about this before a few weeks ago when the nominations for the Golden Globes first came out. It actually looked more like an Oscar ceremony than it did a Golden Globe ceremony. And a lot of this is because they have a new voting body. The Hollywood Foreign Press is no more, so it's a completely different voting body. And it does feel like it came from a different perspective. And that was also reflected in those we saw win major awards. I wouldn't say there was I don't think there were any major surprises for me. If anything, maybe seeing The Boy and the Heron win for animated film as opposed to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, that was pretty.
I thought that was a little surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe also Anatomy of a Fall winning for best non-English language film, especially given the love for Past Lives. But at the same time, Anatomy of a Fall was also recognized in a lot of major categories in that same ceremony. So I also kind of see the connection, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess at this point, if we're going to use the Globes as sort of a springboard into what we start seeing later with the Oscars, especially, I think we can start calling it the Oppenheimer. Because it really seems to be going in that direction. And as we talk about more with the PGA, the Critics' Choice, and what we're seeing thus far, Oppenheimer seems to be the one to beat.
It is.
And I'm not complaining about that.
I'm not complaining about it either. Spoiler alert for those that haven't listened to part 2 of the InSession Film Awards. Brendan, although let the cat out of the bag a little bit ago. But yes, it was my number 1. It was Brendan's number 2. Ryan and Jay had it at number 1 as well.
Yeah.
I hate to be boring in that regard, but it really is the best film of the year. And seemingly that is the case for the Oscars as well, indicative of the Golden Globes. I mean, I actually really liked all of these nominees. We talked about that some weeks ago when we, when the nominations list was unveiled.
Yeah.
And as far as the winners go, I think it was all, maybe somewhat predictable, but worthy. I don't really have any issue with these winners. I do think The Boy and the Heron, and I did mention this a little bit on Chasing the Gold, and I don't know if Joey or Brian, they didn't seem to be as surprised as I was, but I do think there is something noteworthy about The Boy and the Heron winning animated, because Ghibli doesn't usually win these awards. They're nominated somewhat often-ish, or at least they're in the conversation. Yeah, but it's usually Disney and Pixar that win.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, they didn't have a strong year, but then there's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which
is a huge hit.
Coming off the heels of the first one, which, won a bunch of awards, won the Oscar even the year that came out. And now you have a stronger movie even than its predecessor. And for a big chunk of the year, it was like a no-brainer. Of course, that's going to win every award. And here comes The Boy and the Heron, maybe throwing a little wrench into that.
Yeah.
And that to me is exciting because Miyazaki and Ghibli, they just don't win these major awards all that often.
Especially at the Golden Globes, because and this is something we talked about a lot when the Globes nominations were first announced. Like even someone like Joe Hisaishi being nominated for Best Score for The Boy and the Heron,
Yeah.
right? You don't see that very often, which is why, and I don't mean to say that this is less celebratory when we talk about the winners of the Globes, but I feel like there was more to celebrate when we got those nominations because of how different and bold that they were. But at the same time, we are seeing real, genuine talent recognized where it should be when these winners were announced, which is still very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the Academy is different than what you get with the Hollywood Foreign Press.
Sure.
So it's not necessarily going to translate to the Oscars, but it might. It'll be interesting. There's a conversation to be had there. I mean, what if the Academy feels the same? What if Miyazaki does take that category? I do think, as great as that movie is, and you and I, cinephiles, critics, could go back and forth between The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse. It just feels different. Maybe that's myopic of me to say, but it feels different when it comes to something like the Academy, where the history doesn't suggest that a foreign film, such as great as Miyazaki and Ghibli are, they've never really posed much of a threat in terms of the actual award itself.
And when's the last time that happened?
It was Spirited Away.
Spirited Away, which was 2002. So that was over 20 years ago, which was the last time that happened. And you're right. Most times a new Studio Ghibli film comes out, it is at least nominated. I mean, even The Tale of the Princess Kaguya was nominated for Best Animated Film in 2014, 2015, whatever ceremony year that was. But yeah, this is perhaps the first time we'll see Studio Ghibli walk away with that award. But the fact that it is such a two-horse race between not just the two best animated films of the year, but two of the best films of the year in general, in my personal opinion, both were in my top 10, not too far away from each other. It almost doesn't matter which one of the two wins. I'm going to be happy either way.
Yeah, it's a win no matter what.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
No, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and that's just that category is just interesting to me because of that, I guess. But as far as these others go, I mean, Lily Gladstone, she's of course going to be in the mix there, probably front runner there for that.
Front runner.
Cillian Murphy and Paul Giamatti winning is interesting because it's certainly going to come down to those two.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, Critics' Choice is happening right now as we're recording this. I don't know if they've gotten to Best Actor as we've been recording.
Okay. We have an update. It was Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti wins Critics' Choice.
Yes, he wins Critics' Choice. Apparently, this was maybe just announced like a couple of minutes ago as we're talking about this.
Well, there you go. That's extremely exciting. See, now that makes things interesting,
and
because Killian's won quite a few as well. But now maybe it's Giamatti's to lose as well. It could go either way.
Let's go continue this either way conversation, right? Because Best Actress, you just mentioned Lily Gladstone, perhaps the front runner. Critics' Choice just went to Emma Stone.
Well, there you go. Okay. Yeah, so things are heating up a little bit in terms of those two races at the very least.
This is reminding me a lot of when Oscar ceremonies and competitions were happening in the 2000s specifically, especially around like 2005 to 2010. It was usually always a two-horse race in all of the major categories, right? You can almost pin it down between two major films. Like when The King's Speech won Best Picture, it was between that and The Social Network, I felt like. Or when Avatar was out, it was between Avatar and The Hurt Locker. You can always find like the two-horse race in many of those categories back in the day. Not to say it should be or that it shouldn't be. It's just sometimes it makes it more easily like translatable, if that makes sense. And I feel like we're seeing that a lot now. So there's almost like this weird sense of nostalgia I'm getting within the awards conversation that's taking me back to a time when movies were just a very different beast and the competition was a very different beast. Because we have these two frontrunners in many of these categories, at least in the acting categories now, between these two lead categories that we're talking about now. I just find that so interesting. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen at the Oscars now. I really don't.
I don't know either. And that does I think, throw a jolt into this season because so much of the complaining thus far has been the predictability of it, especially when it comes to supporting, right? It's Divine, Jordan Randolph, and Downey Jr. just continuously sweeping everywhere they go, including Critics' Choice.
Yeah.
What we saw tonight.
Yeah, Downey Jr., Davine Joy Randolph, both winners in the respective supporting actor and actress categories.
Absolutely. And then you talk about other categories such as score, Ludwig Göransson continuing to dominate as he should, although, and maybe this is a conversation for when we get closer to the Oscars, but it might depend on if he's nominated or not. Because as much as I love Ludwig, and he was, if you listen to the InSession Film Awards, my vote for best score as well. But I will say this, even though my vote would go to Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer, there is a part of me that really hopes that Joe Hisaishi not only gets nominated, but somehow steals that category. Just as like a legacy win.
Yeah, and
it's still arguably one of the best anyway.
That's what saves it for me, because legacy wins are kind of a dangerous thing sometimes, because you have two types of legacy wins. You have the first type, which is where the person winning is really for their career achievement, but at the same time, they're winning an award that still deserved the award in the first place, right? And I feel like that's the case with Joe Hisaishi, because I still love his score for The Boy and the Heron. Or you have someone like Martin Scorsese winning Best Director for The Departed, which I feel like was really just there because he's Martin Scorsese. And we've talked about this offline many times. I don't think The Departed is one of his best films.
No,
I think it's a very entertaining film, but that's a case where I think a legacy win is kind of problematic in some ways. I don't think that's the same case at all with Joe Hisaishi this year, if he were to win that award. So while I do think Ludwig's score for Oppenheimer is technically better than what Joe Hisaishi is doing, I actually think Joe Hisaishi has done better scores in the past. It's still a tender and beautiful work that he's providing for The Boy and the Heron. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it win.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed either. And you do make a great point, because there have been legacy wins in the past that feel a little disingenuous because it's a legacy win. There's not much merit to the victory. And I love Scorsese. I know there's others listening to this that disagree with us, that love The Departed. But I'm with you. I think the film is entertaining. It's fine. It's very Scorsese, but I think it's far from his best work. Ironically, we're in a Scorsese legacy era now.
I know, right?
He might not win.
He's giving himself the legacy award anyway.
Exactly. He has this Oscar. And it's also unfortunate because Killers of the Flower Moon comes out in a year where he's up against one of the best directorial achievements of the 21st century so far. And it should go to Nolan. What Nolan does with Oppenheimer is just unreal. If Killers came out in any other year, last year, maybe the year before, like, could he still get another Oscar?
He probably could.
Probably
he probably could, because like in any other
Yeah.
year, that could have been at least the technical achievement of the year. Maybe not the film of the year. Because the difference between that film and what Nolan gave with Oppenheimer is that Nolan kind of gave both the technical achievement of the year and the film of the year, especially given the box office success for a 3-hour biography that almost made $1 billion. Like that is kind of the film of the year. Like that is an unprecedented fact. And the fact that it is also one of the best technical achievements of the past few years even is amazing. Like in many ways, Nolan does deserve that award. But if it weren't for Nolan, this could have been Scorsese's to lose, right? Like I feel like it, at least the conversation is possibly there.
Yeah. And speaking of Nolan, he just won director at Critics' Choice. Shocking, I know.
Yeah, we're doing live updates as we speak. I feel like a news commentator right now.
I know. But yes, you are right. In any other year, or at least in most other years, he's in the conversation, maybe up to win that award, given what he did with Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
But, when you're up against Oppenheimer.
His most recent stretch, we talk about this a lot, his legacy era, which I mean, a lot of people say has 4-film run, starting with, what was that? The Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, Silence, and now Killers of the Flower Moon. That's kind of his legacy era in some ways, because all of those films are sort of deconstructing the ethos of Martin Scorsese in a lot of ways, whether it be religion or filmmaking or the debauchery of his films. I would say that stretches back even further. Hugo introduces it by being a movie about movies, right? Like that's, in many ways, that's the first chapter. It sets the stage for Scorsese recognizing him as a presence in the film world. So it's so neat to see 5 films all in a row that's all about his own participation in the film world. I love that. I love that.
It's incredible. It's such a reflective, ruminative era that we're in with Scorsese, and I love it. I am deeply here for it. I think it's as good as any other era of Scorsese, and I'm excited to see what he does in the next few years, if he continues that at all.
An 80-minute Jesus movie.
Oh yes, that's going to be the next one. 80 minutes, quote unquote. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe
you find out it's like
180 minutes.
You find out it's like a 4-part movie, and it's each part's like 80 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So one other element outside of the Globes that I did want to mention here, and I know we've somewhat talked about Critics' Choice.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention PGA, because when we did Chasing the Gold last week, it was prior to the announcement of the PGA nominations.
Right.
So the 10 we got was, in alphabetical order, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest, making the 10 there.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite fascinating. A lot of pundits were harping on that being the 10 for the Oscars. They think that will be the 10 that translates. And I find that fascinating. This is, honestly, if this is the 10 we get, one of the best picture lineups we've had in how long? I think that's really good.
I'm looking at all of these now. Let's say hypothetically these are the 10. Yeah, the majority of these get like that 4 out of 5-star range for me on Letterboxd. There's only one in this list I don't particularly care for, and that's Maestro.
Yeah, same.
Like that's the only one I think is, and even that's a film I don't hate. I'm just more mixed on it. I think it's a great exercise for Bradley Cooper as a filmmaker, but not much else for me. But a lot of these other films, like, this is a very bold but also quite great lineup, right?
Yeah,
That's great.
Nine of these 10 are in my top 25, and only one of them is outside the top 20, and that's American Fiction. But that's a film I also quite adore. Maestro was the only one that's outside of my top 50. I'm with you there. And I still like it. I do appreciate Maestro. I'm not anti-Maestro or anti-Bradley Cooper.
It has a great performance by Snoopy in it.
Exactly. Like, I don't want to be lumped in with the hater crowd, because I don't dislike that film. I'm not actively trying to separate myself from Maestro. I'm simply mixed on the film. Particularly, I don't love the writing, but there's a lot about it, acting, performances, production, that is really good. The rest of these, though, I think are quite great.
Yeah.
Quite great.
So I guess with that said, like, a lot of people think this could be the 10, but I feel like if one were to miss, most likely it might be Maestro, because there have been a few misses in other award ceremonies for that film.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, like, what could it be replaced by if we are sticking with the 10 for the Oscars?
Well, it's interesting because DGA also came out, which we briefly talked about on Chasing the Gold. But one thing we didn't talk about, though, is Cooper missed for DGA.
He did. That's right.
So I don't think that film is nearly like, it's not a front runner for Best Picture at all.
It's not. No.
And given how we've seen actor play out, he's not in the race for acting either.
Right.
This is Giamatti and Cillian Murphy's to lose, right? It's that 2-horse race, as we talked about.
Exactly.
So to your point, and Carey Mulligan, God love her, hasn't really been in the conversation either. So unless Maestro gets in for some technical achievements, could it sneak in for editing? If if Cooper isn't nominated for director, I highly doubt that, but maybe it gets in for cinematography, maybe sound. I don't know.
Mhm.
It could get in for some other craft categories, but Maestro, I think, is very much down at the bottom of this list, to your point.
I think it is. Yeah. And that's why my next question is like do we want to speculate? Do we want to play that game? Like, because we're still going to get 10 nominees at the Oscars, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. So what would it be replaced by? Like if anything, I don't.
That is a really great question.
Now, this is where I think could The Color Purple
The
actually
Color Purple, yeah.
surprise people, or
Yeah.
could they throw in an animated film? The Academy,
Yeah, Spider-Man maybe.
maybe.
I know some people were hoping for that with the PGA. It clearly didn't get in, but maybe that becomes the 10th slot at the Oscars.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah.
I would say,
I don't know.
Yeah, but The Color Purple hasn't been getting much love either.
That's why I brought it up as a question mark. Like, it feels like the kind of film that would, but the trajectory of getting to that point hasn't been in its favor. Like, it's missed out on too many things, and it's unfortunate because it's a pretty good movie.
I agree.
But I mean, stylistically, tonally, that's the kind of film that would make sense to fall into that lineup, at least at the Oscars. Like, I could see it there. It tonally has a place. I don't know if that's going to be the case for what it has to compete with.
Yeah, I don't know what it has to compete with either, and it's not going to be May, December.
No,
probably not All of Us Strangers.
No,
I would think it has to be The Color Purple. Although for the reasons we mentioned, it's Spider-Verse is the only one that makes the most sense.
Yeah,
and maybe
does.
Maybe Air somehow sneaks into this.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Or Saltburn, but again, that's polarizing. That's a little bit of that May December thing.
That's too polarizing. I think. I think Saltburn and May December are just too outside the Academy's wheelhouse right now.
Yeah, the only thing that makes sense outside of these 10 is Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Anything else that feels like a stretch to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think these are the 10. The other one, though, that makes me a little nervous is Past Lives because it's this small film. Now, it's been lingering throughout the year, right? Because it had a really early release. So, and it's been pushed by, what was that, A24 that had that film? A24.
Yep, A24.
So they've been pushing that. Greta Lee's been out all over the place promoting it, talking about the film and her performance. So I do think it's in the voters' consciousness, and hopefully they've seen it. And hopefully they've responded like everyone else has. But it's the small little gem of a film that doesn't always make it into the 10. So that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah,
but
here's my worry about Past Lives, and it's not really a worry. It's just if it were to miss on some major categories at the Oscars, maybe it's because of the Academy voting members' perspective on already honoring a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, another Asian-backed A24 film. Now, granted, it's a very different cultural dynamic because you have the Korean perspective being represented here in Past Lives, but I wonder if that could be part of the mindset. And I don't know. It's unfortunate if that were to be the case, but I don't know if that could be the case if Past Lives finds itself a little bit underneath the shadows of some of these other films. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a great point. It's hard to say, but I am curious where that goes. But I do think at the end of the day, the 10 that the PGA nominated, that'll be the 10 at the Oscars.
Most likely.
And then from there, we noted that Nolan's he's locked up Best Director. So that leads to Screenplay. And, earlier we talked about the Globes and we mentioned Critics' Choice. Critics' Choice did throw in a little bit of a curveball with those categories, with Barbie and especially Cord Jefferson taking Adapted. Yeah. It's a surprise. I hate, though, that the Critics' Choice nominations do not have speeches for those. Like, they do that off telecast. I despise that. I understand that there's a time element because they also have TV awards. But man, the screenplay feels like a big category. to
especially
not
this
have
well
on the
especially
telecast.
this year, like given the back and forth of whether a film like Barbie is even an adapted versus original screenplay, because now it's competing at the Oscars for adapted screenplay, but it wins for best original screenplay at the Critics Choice Awards. So like there's a disparity there, and I think it's worth talking about. Like that's part of the conversation. That is part of the narrative for the awards ceremonies this year. And you would kind of think, or you would at least kind of hope to see Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach give some thoughts on not just that, but just the fact that they're representing their film. What do they have to say about, the work that they put into their film, regardless of whether it's categorized as original versus adapted? Like it's just the point I'm making is that it's part of the conversation. It doesn't seem like this is a category you want to not televise. Like it's marketable. There's something to say there.
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Greta Gerwig get up there and talk about Barbie? I understand Cord Jefferson is a name that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but winning Best Adapted Screenplay seems like a big win given how stacked of a category that is in 2023.
And he's a first timer, right?
He's a first timer. Yeah. So it is a little surprising, and I would have loved to have, heard him give a speech. Of course, Greta, who doesn't want to hear Greta talk?
That's the other thing. Like the other reason why I bring it up in that way is because I love hearing Greta's speeches. I love hearing what she has to say. It's always entertaining.
Absolutely. And look, I understand that I'm a nerd when it comes to this category, but Best Original Score is my favorite. I want to hear Ludwig talk about Oppenheimer. Okay, get him on stage, please. At any rate, I don't love the telecast. I do think they need to reevaluate. I know that some of it is time. They can't put all of these categories on the telecast without it being 6.5 hours. I understand that.
Yeah.
But you have to take it some liberties. I think screenplay feels like a big category to not have on the telecast.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Speaking of the telecast, I want to bring this up because Brian brought this up on Chasing the Gold, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So I've talked forever about how film awards is sports. It is.
Yeah.
Film awards is sports.
It is. Yeah.
You may not be a sports person as you're listening to this. Maybe you are. But it is sports. The behavior is the same. What we've seen this year, and this happens every year, but what we've seen this year regarding Maestro and Bradley Cooper and this manufactured rivalry that people have created. I can't have Bradley Cooper winning. He poses a threat to my beloved Cillian Murphy. So we're going to attack him.
Yeah.
And that's one example. Downey Jr. falls into this as well. We, of course, have joked forever about La La Land and Moonlight. That whole debacle.
Yeah.
Got a t-shirt even for it.
I feel like that's where it started more than anything else.
The behavior is the same. If you're not a sports fan, trust me when I tell you that behavior that you've seen, the hatred, these manufactured rivalries, it is the same as sports.
It is
the same. That behavior is no different than what I saw this last week and all the Ohio State haters talking about Michigan winning the national championship and all of their chirping and barking.
Yeah.
And Michigan fans give it right back. That's what rivalries are about.
Yeah.
And that's the behavior, verbatim, what we see with movie awards as well.
I mean, it's funny. It's even like the tone, not just the behavior, but the tone, the way that those insults, if it gets to that, are even carried, are kind of similar, right? Like it has a similar sense of aggression. It's not even like the nerd culture and the sports culture having different, I guess, mannerisms in how they portray their rivalries, but like even the agendas and the tones are all similar now. It's morphing and becoming one thing.
And that's actually really important too, because when you're talking about sports, if there's a team that you don't like, you'll often see people take certain aspects of that team. Maybe it's the quarterback play, and they specifically attack that. Really go after it. Even if the quarterback is good, they will cherry pick certain stats or certain parts about the game to downplay that in order to lift their quarterback up or lift their team up.
Or what you'll also do is, let's say during a football game, for instance, if there's any type of, I don't know, like a pass interference or something like that against your team, you will try and manufacture reasons why it's a bad call, right?
Yes.
You do the same thing in the art world too. If there's something that doesn't go in your favor, right?
Yeah. American Fiction, that part of the screenplay doesn't work for all that well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the same thing of being, no, that's a penalty on that play.
It's a penalty on that movie.
It's the same tone, same behavior.
Yeah.
So I find that hilarious. Now, the reason I bring that up is because Brian on Chasing the Gold was talking about the broadcast.
Okay.
So now NBC, these television channels, these studios have not only adopted the vibe and tone of sports, they've adopted the broadcast style. Because what have we complained about when it comes to college football? 3 plays, commercials. Come back, another 3 plays, commercials. Or my favorite, and by that I mean the worst thing I've ever experienced when it comes to sports broadcasting, someone will score a touchdown, 5 minutes of commercials, come back for a kickoff,
Only back to another commercial
back
break.
to 5 minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
And then you're back to the game. Absolutely can't stand it. So what has the Globes done? And I noticed it tonight because Brian mentioned this on Chasing the Gold. We didn't get to see the Globes telecast, but this is what Brian was saying about it. And so I paid attention tonight, and Critics' Choice did the exact same thing. What did they do? 2 awards, commercials. 2 awards, 5 minutes of commercials. 2 awards, 5 minutes of commercials. It's like, can we please get to the damn game?
I think you're running low on time. Then, I mean, first off, that's a great example as to why you are running long on time. But at this point now, it's like
what are we
would
doing?
you even? At this point, would you even be surprised if they added a halftime report or something like that?
Yeah, we're sending Critics' Choice to halftime.
Yeah,
like it blew my mind. Like, and again, like,
Good point, Brian. It's a good point.
Yeah, it was so funny when he brought that up about the Globes, which I didn't see, but I certainly noticed it tonight with Critics' Choice. I was like, this is a sports broadcast. What they are doing is the sports formula.
They are.
It was hilarious to me. I could not believe what I was witnessing. I was like, I already think this is sports. They clearly think this is sports because that's the broadcast they decided to go with.
But that's the thing. It's almost like it's conditioning people to think of it as a sports match, right? Because we're already conditioned to that format, that start and go format, if you will, in the sports world, right? That's how, at least in football, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's kind of conditioning us to see the Critics' Choice, the Golden Globes, whatever, as kind of the same thing. It's almost like this psychological form of manipulation. It's ridiculous.
It drives me crazy. I hate that about college football. It is one of the best sports on the planet, but it is an unwatchable product on TV. It just is. It's unwatchable. It really is. Like, and these ceremonies, and then they have the gall to not throw in, best score, screenplay. They have to cut that out. When you've had 5,000 minutes of commercials in this broadcast, but you have to take that out of it.
I know you say that as I know you say that as hyperbole, but it honestly doesn't feel like it.
No,
5,000 minutes. It really doesn't.
Just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Hilarious.
That's a really good observation from Brian. He makes a great point there. But it is almost like conditioning us to think of it as a sporting match. It really is. Which is unfortunate.
It just gives credence to the whole sporting aura that comes with a movie and film awards.
Man,
which
the more...
I already have a love-hate relationship. Like, I don't have any issue with awards themselves. The whole turning it into sports is maybe where I have a problem with it.
Yeah, the more we talk about this, the more I sometimes feel less compelled to watch any of these award ceremonies now, because it is conditioning us to think of them differently in a way that I don't necessarily want to think of them as. I like to see them as celebratory experiences and celebration of art. But at the same time, honoring those that may have been among the best artistic expressions of the year, not a form of rivalry. And it is turning into that.
It is. They're trying to turn it into a product. They, of course, want to amp up the rivalry as much as possible. And I think they're taking the sports formula in order to manifest that. And that unfortunately gives credence to all of the artificiality that exists in the discourse.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
So-
It makes our one shirt about Moonlight and La La Land all the more pertinent.
All the more. Exactly. That will just
I think we
never
have
go
to start giving that shirt away. It needs to. We need to
know.
get on our soapbox and spread that like wildfire. It's a message right now.
I
It's a
know,
cry
I
for
agree.
help.
Do you have any final thoughts on awards before we move to 2024?
I guess just one final thought, because we are doing this live in the middle of the Critics' Choice Awards. As we're recording this right now, Oppenheimer has won Best Film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see that.
Yeah.
Again, it's one
Not
of the
a
best
surprise.
films of the 21st century.
Not a surprise.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty safe to say it's going to win Best Picture of the Oscars. I don't see it going another way at this point.
it will, and I can almost virtually guarantee this, says the non-awards Oscars pundit.
Yeah.
But I would guarantee Best Picture, Best Director, Editing, and Score. It will at least win those. I'm also fairly confident in cinematography, fairly confident in visual effects. Killian is the one that has become the most questionable. Quite questionable.
Yeah, did you say supporting actor as well in that?
Oh, and supporting actor is
I think
guaranteed.
I
as
think
well.
Downey Jr.'s got it in the bag now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So it's going to at least win those, 5 that we noted as guarantees.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
And then
so.
probably cinematography, probably visual effects.
Yeah.
So
It's a movie. It's a movie.
And it is a great movie. All right, Brendan, let's talk about coffee. It's
Oh,
our favorite.
adult medicine. Adult
We
medicine right
love
there.
a good coffee. And I say this with every pretentious fiber in my being, that a great coffee, you don't need anything in it. You can
No, you
drink
do
that
not. No.
black, as pure as
That's what it is.
possible.
Purity. No additives, nothing to literally cloud it, to change it up a bit. You don't
Yeah.
need to re-flavor that.
Nope.
It
you
should have a great starting point.
don't
That's
need
what it should have.
sugar, you don't need milk. Although I understand it, with bad coffees you need milk.
Oh,
And
you do.
That's what Starbucks has. Oh, I said the word. I said the S word. Oh no.
The chills, like the hairs on the back of my neck are starting to stand up now. We're
But
bad. We're bad. We're throwing them under the bus.
I know, but that's what they have taught this country, is that, and really the world at large, they're all over the world now, but they have taught everyone to love bad coffee. They make it that way on purpose.
It's caffeinated milk. That's what it is.
They make their coffee not good on purpose. You know why? Because you want to get a large fruity drink, right?
Yeah.
You want to get the caramels and the chocolates and all the sugars and the whipped creams. That's what they want. Like, so you throw all that crap in and you call it coffee and you buy it for $15. And Starbucks is like, yes, please. Yeah, we'll take that cash.
Ka-ching.
Yeah, we'll take that. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that begs the question, is it even coffee?
No, it's not. And look, it's a great business model. To be
is.
fair to them, they got that down to a science.
It is. And to be fair, they've made products and what they consider coffees that I think from a taste standpoint are not technically bad. It's just not what I would consider coffee. Like if I want coffee, I want Coffee Cult.
Yeah, exactly. It's not high-end gourmet specialty grade coffee. That is for sure. There's no doubt about it. That's why we love Coffee Cult. You can turn their coffee into sugary drinks. I wouldn't recommend that though.
Neither would I.
For a couple of reasons, you're kind of doubling up on the flavors because the coffee is so rich because it's specialty grade that you're taking the flavors and making a profile that is going to overwhelm you. And two, you're taking natural, organic flavors that's in the coffee already, like rich blueberry, chocolatey flavors in the coffee already, and you're undermining that by throwing in milk and sugar. Like you just don't need it.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
the brilliance of Coffee Cult. And And look, you can get a coffee that is sweet. Like the Ethiopian Harar, I love because it's like drinking a blueberry muffin. You can really taste the blueberries and the strawberry flavor profiles. Or if you want something nutty and chocolatey, you can go to, the Sumatra.
Yeah, that
That's what I
that
love
was going to be
about
my
that one.
pick. Or if your sweetness palate is something more comparable to, let's say, like a bourbon drink or something like that. There are bourbon infused flavors as well that Coffee Cult has as well. So like, they cover the gamut. They really do. They're all about those natural flavors.
Yeah, and that's why their coffee is the best. You got to check it out. It's ethically sourced. It's roasted to order. They don't just have coffee sitting around. They roast it as when the orders come in, so it's fresh every single time.
Yep.
You got to check it out. So go to coffeecult.com. That's coffee with a K, cult with a K. Coffeecult.com. Use our code ISF. You'll get 15% off. Again, that code is ISF. You'll get 15% off at coffeecult.com. All right, Brennan, we need to talk about the InSession Film Store.
Merchandise, baby.
And I think we should start here because we mentioned it in the last segment talking about award season.
Yeah.
And some of the crazy discourse that comes along with it. We
Sports.
have a t-shirt that, with the text on it, it just simply says, the best thing that ever happened to La La Land is that it lost Best Picture to Moonlight. And we've told this story many times before, but coming off the heels of the discussion we just had, it feels appropriate to reiterate because when those films came out, people really wanted La La Land to lose.
Yeah.
Not because they didn't like the movie. They probably liked it.
No.
They might have even loved it.
It was not preferred to their beloved Moonlights.
It was a rival. It was a rival to Moonlight. And so we had to bash that film to raise this film that we love.
Yeah.
And that's what sports fans do.
Yeah.
That's what sports fans
That's what they do.
So we created a t-shirt because the whole sports art thing is something I can't wrap my mind around. So the best thing that ever happened to La La Land is that it lost Best Picture to Moonlight, because now La La Land can live in the freedom of being away from that manufactured rivalry.
Yeah, because now it's just a great movie.
And now it's just a great movie, and Moonlight is one of the Best Picture winners we've seen out of the last, maybe forever. Who knows?
So you would think everyone wins, right?
So everybody wins. That's the spirit of the t-shirt. Is that everybody wins. So you can go and check that out. It's one of my favorite shirts that we have.
Yeah, I love it.
And you can see that shirt and everything we have. All of our merchandise can be found at InSessionFilm.com/store. We have Women in Session t-shirts. We got Star Wars inspired t-shirts, Barbie inspired, all kinds of fun things. You can also go directly to TeePublic, who we source our t-shirts through. And that link is tpublic.com/stores/InSessionFilm. So you can go directly to TeePublic or go to the website. Either way, and all of these styles, they come not just in t-shirts, but you can get mugs, stickers, magnets, all kinds of fun things. There
Ties.
TeePublic.
I was really hoping you were going to wear an InSession Film tie when you came to my wedding.
Yeah, one day. Next
One
time.
day.
The next time we meet up.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you weren't saying next time I get married, because
No, the next time we meet up. However that looks like. But yes, go to InSessionFilm.com/store, get your InSession Film gear, and we'll celebrate both Moonlight and La La Land together.
Love it.
All right. With that, we'll have more Oscars talk as we get to the nominations here in about a week or so. And then, of course, when we get closer to the actual ceremony itself. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and transition to 2024. Talk about our most anticipated movies of this coming year.
Yeah.
And as we've done in the past, we will do this as a top 5.
Yep.
So Brendan and I will talk about our top 5 most anticipated films of 2024. However, we will reveal a full top 10, our full top 10 most anticipated of 2024. But I also want to start here, Brendan, because I certainly have a couple of notes. Do you have any criteria for this list?
That's a good question. And I did think about this because there are at least 2 films I can think of, maybe even more, that we may have included on a prior anticipated list. And I'm not going to say what those two films are because I don't know if you're considering them again. I think
Well,
both
I have
films.
four. I have four
Okay.
that I've left off.
Okay, can I guess what two of them are? Because I think one of them is going to be Jeff Nichols' The Bike Riders,
Of course. Yep.
and Joshua Oppenheimer's The End.
Yep. Those two.
Okay.
Additionally, last year I had Dune Part 2 at my number 7, most anticipated film of 2023. And at number 9, I had Marielle Heller's Night Bitch as my number 9.
Yeah,
most anticipated
I think
film.
I had that on my list as well. Okay,
You
so
did, yeah.
I had this in the back of my mind that I would want to try to avoid films that we did already discuss that we thought were coming out in 2023. Now, in
Yes.
actuality, if I'm doing this as a true list, the idea of Joshua Oppenheimer's The End especially is so fascinating. It might genuinely be my most anticipated film of the year.
Yeah.
But we have talked about it already quite a bit. We like to try to focus on differing it up or changing it up a bit, adding some variety. So I think for the sake of being consistent, I might leave those 4 off my list as well.
Yeah, so I did create a true list. I have 2 top 10s, although
Okay.
mostly the same. But because of Joshua Oppenheimer's The End, and maybe another, I have a true list. But because I couldn't, in my heart of hearts, just completely disregard The End because it is very high on my list, on a true list. But we did talk about it quite extensively last year. As I noted, it was in my top 5 last year, so I don't want to rehash it necessarily. We can certainly talk about that at the end, I guess, and honorable mentions. But for the sake of this exercise, I did keep it off, but it is on my true list of the year.
Yeah, okay. And I'm with you in that regard. Both The End, Night Bitch, actually not even both, all of those 4 films that we talked about. Night Bitch, I think, was in my top 10 of last year, but we obviously didn't get it. And of course, The Bike Riders, we were supposed to get in 2023, and other factors prevented that from happening. Very unfortunate. And given the marketing that we've seen thus far, I'm actually very looking forward to that film. I think it looks like a lot of fun. The other film I'm going to leave off my list, and in actuality, this is probably a film I'm willing to put in my top 5 on a true list, but I just don't know if it's coming out. The director's cut of Napoleon.
That is a great point, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know either.
Yeah, but I'm genuinely interested in that.
I am too. I am too.
I guess I'll call it my Napoleon possibility award or something like that. My memorial, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it off for those reasons because again, most of these movies we talk about, some of them don't have official release dates yet. They could also be pushed back even further to 2025.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's another film that I'm just not sure about, but I am really interested in seeing that 4-hour version of Napoleon. I think there's a great movie in there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. We'll have to talk about it in some way, shape, or form whenever it does come out. With that on the table, our criteria laid out there, let's go ahead and jump into our list then. Brendan, what do you have at number 5?
Well, I guess it's really appropriate that I just got done talking about Napoleon being on my memorial list. Ridley Scott has another film coming out this year, though. I am very interested in what he's going to do with this Gladiator 2. This Gladiator sequel.
Yeah.
And the idea of this movie does not really strike me as something I would be anticipating. If that
I was going to
makes sense.
say, I'm a little surprised it's on your list, if I'm being honest.
It's the what if. It's the what if of it all. But I think it's all. There are 2 things that really boost it high for me. One of them being the cast. Not just Paul Mescal, but seeing Connie Nelson coming back. Apparently, Denzel Washington, I guess, is going to be in this. So the cast looks pretty stacked. Pedro Pascal apparently is going to be in this, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's a very good cast. The big reason why I have this high on my list is that just given the visual splendor of a movie like Napoleon, and the fact that a movie like The Last Duel is just genuinely good, I am liking Ridley Scott returning to the world of these epics and making movies that we just don't see enough of anymore. Like it feels like it in a way, it sort of goes back to our thoughts on the year 2023 and how blockbuster movie making was almost like going back to a certain era that we just don't see anymore. And in many ways, I feel like Ridley Scott is kind of doing that with these big historical epics. That doesn't mean the films themselves are always successful as films, but they just have they have a look and an energy and a vastness and a sense of place that we just don't see as much anymore. And the expensive quality of them is just exciting to see. He always knows how to direct an action sequence, so I know regardless if Gladiator 2 is a good movie or not, it's going to be a visual wonder. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm excited about. The fact that it's kind of continuing the narrative of what movies used to be, and the fact that maybe we're clamoring for those again. We as just a general audience are now clamoring for that again. It's not just about what's being manufactured on an assembly line or in some green screen written back lot. Like, there's more to it nowadays, and Ridley Scott's there to prove the point. So that's why I'm excited for. I think there's going to be more of that narrative there.
I agree. I think that's a really great point. Audiences certainly seem to suggest with their money, with their wallets this last year, that they're hoping for something new, something rich, something epic, like what we saw with Gladiator. And, I guess in some ways it's a little unfortunate that The Last Duel came out a few years ago. I wonder if that would have been a much bigger hit this year, or even coming off the heels of Oppenheimer last year. I think there would have been an appetite for it, versus a couple of years ago.
Tonally, aesthetically, The Last Duel feels way more 2023 than it does 2021.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it'll be a little ironic, I guess, given the kind of film that Gladiator is, Gladiator 2, if this does well. I mean, it's coming off the heels of a Best Picture winner.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Can any other film claim that? Have there been Best Picture winners that have sequels? I don't know.
The Godfather?
I truly don't know. The Godfather, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great one.
And
there.
I guess, I mean, Lord of the Rings sort of falls into that category, but like the Best Picture winner was really only one film in that trilogy, and in many ways it was a collective win for the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that kind of carries a big asterisk, right? Like it doesn't really
Godfather's
fit.
a good one though.
Yeah.
There aren't many, is I guess the point there though. And this is also coming 20 some odd years later. So it's not as if it's coming off the immediate success of that first Gladiator. So I find that fascinating. I think it's coming out at a good time, given what we saw with Oppenheimer last year. And it has an extensive cast, as you noted, including a rising star in Paul Mescal. So yeah, I'm very excited to see where this goes. And I'm a huge fan of that first Gladiator. I know I like it carries that Best Picture reputation, and so there's a little bit of a downplaying the film, 2 decades later. But I think it's genuinely great and one of Scott's best films still.
It's an actor's vehicle. Yeah, like there are things about the movie I don't love, but as a spectacle, it is really great.
Great spectacle.
And it's also a very moving film. Like what I like about that film is that there's a good sense of sincerity to it. Like, it really does believe in its story and its characters. At least Ridley Scott does, and that maybe helped make up for any of its, I don't want to say blemishes, but thematically speaking, it's not the densest of movies that Ridley Scott has made. It's a very simple movie in a lot of regards, but it's a very entertaining and moving film. Like, it works on those levels, and I would love to see him kind of tap into that again for this sequel if it's going to feel very old-fashioned in that way. Like, that's going to be really exciting to see.
I agree. All right, for my number 5, I'm going to the world of Steve McQueen. You know him?
He does have a
You
new
love
film
him?
coming out, doesn't he?
He has a new film called Blitz. Okay. We got a 3-layer cake here. Okay? 3-layer of deliciousness.
Sounds pretty sweet, doesn't it?
Yeah, that first layer, Steve McQueen. That's all you need. That layer alone is rich and delicious and incredible. Everything Steve McQueen does is remarkable. He had one of my favorite films a few years ago with that anthology series that he did. Fantastic stuff. You get to the second layer, pretty good cast. Saoirse Ronan, Harris Dickinson, among others. Oh, that's a great cake. That's a great layer as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you get to the third layer, World War II history. This is about...
Oh, yeah. That's your bread and butter.
This is about the Blitz of World War II. Londoners trying to survive. I don't know the exact details. I don't know what Steve McQueen plans on on tackling in that regard, where he plans on taking it. Maybe he's denoted that in an interview and I simply haven't found it. But I do know this is about the Blitz in London in World War II. So, yeah, you have my attention there. That layer alone would have grabbed me, let alone telling me it stars Saoirse Ronan and it's directed by Steve McQueen.
It sounds like a devastating story. Like, just given that story there, it honestly gives me Grave of the Fireflies vibes.
It could.
Yeah.
I mean, given the response of Britain to that, and this is a separate story. I hope one day this is told. And I hate to keep coming back to this because it's something that I just love. It's a part of whom I am. But the air war of World War II is fascinating. And I mean this, I don't mean this facetiously at all. If it was not for the pilots, the British pilots during the Battle of London or the Battle of Britain, if they did not defeat the Luftwaffe, I think world history would be very different. Very, very different. Like, they genuinely changed the trajectory of that war. That was the first loss that Hitler had. And eventually the United States would have gotten into the war, and who knows, they might have still won the war. But it would have played out very, very differently had Hitler taken England, and he would have, if not for those British pilots. Yeah. So there's another movie to be told. Steve McQueen's not going to get into that, but it's a part of this story that I think is fascinating. So, like, as dour as it sounds, like, oh, it's this huge blitz on London, and look, it was devastating. There were a lot of lives lost, but it was in the end an inspirational tale. I don't know if he's going to weave that into the ending of this story at all, or if it's going to be, to your point about, maybe it'll be tonally Grave of the Fireflies. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. But I think it's fascinating. There's a lot of great history to be told there. But it's Steve McQueen, so it's going to be much deeper. It's going to be a lot more than just the history of it. Where he's going to obviously compel us with his characters and his themes and its emotion. Yeah. That 3-layer cake, I can't wait to eat it. Can't wait. I'm saving my film calories until that movie comes out.
I have not disliked anything Steve McQueen has done yet. I've always been at least fascinated by everything he has done, even if I didn't love everything in, let's say, the Small Axe saga, if you want to call it that. But there were some bangers in there, and man, movies like Shame and Hunger, especially a movie like Hunger, which I think tonally, this almost sounds like it might be closest in line to something like Hunger, given the historical ramifications of it and the violence that ensued because of it.
Yeah, we know he's good at delving into history.
He's very good at that,
and he's using it for inspiration.
He's very visceral with it too. Like, those movies are not very pleasant at all. And and not to say that movies like this should be unpleasant. But sometimes they need to be, but a good filmmaker knows how to do it in a way that doesn't feel exploitative. And I trust Steve McQueen to be able to pull that off.
I agree. And that's where, when I remove myself from my giddiness of this story,
sure,
you're all right. I mean, you look at his films and there is a visceral quality to him. There's like this grounded pathos that he injects into the film that...
Oh, his movies are harsh sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. And I do expect that he's going to deliver on that level with Blitz. To what degree, we'll see. But I'm very much expecting that. And then, of course, there's Saoirse Ronan in the middle of it. And also, she had that film Foe that came out last year that I sadly passed on because it did not
I didn't see it
get good
either.
reviews at all. It was honestly one of my most anticipated films of the fall season, and I simply just didn't give it a go because I had heard really bad things, and so I had to prioritize other films. But she hasn't really done much since Little Women in 2019.
Yeah.
She might have had a few other small films. Like, she had the one, I don't know if that was last year or the year before.
What, Ammonite or something like that? Is that the one you're thinking of? Or
the one? No, I think it was the one. It was like a mystery film, like a.
See How They Run. How They Run.
I really enjoyed that. It was this small little gem of a movie that didn't get much attention. But I really liked it. I thought she was great in that. Yeah. But in terms of, her being in the conversation at the end of the year. We just haven't seen that in quite a few years.
Sure.
Maybe,
Yeah, it's fair.
Maybe this will be her way back into that conversation.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. She's a very talented actress, and if she
Yeah.
gets a chance to work with a great director like Steve McQueen, he might be able to pull some things out of her that we've never even seen before.
Yeah,
And she's usually very good at surprising us, for sure.
for sure. Okay, you're number 4.
My number 4, I guess I just got done talking about Ridley Scott, so I'll keep the Ridley Scott train going by picking something that's Ridley Scott adjacent, if that makes sense. Alien Romulus.
Brendan, what are you doing to me?
I don't know what I'm doing to you, but I did not expect that reaction.
I'd never. Okay, if you gave me 100 guesses as to what's on your top 5, I would not have said this movie. And here it is at your number 4.
I am such a huge fan of the Alien franchise. Anything with the Alien tag, I'm going to be excited for.
Okay.
Like it's genuinely why it is. And I don't love Fede Alvarez as much as a filmmaker, but I think what I've seen from him as a technician with movies like Don't Breathe and his version of Evil Dead, which I think is genuinely quite good. I actually think he is a really good fit for the Alien franchise.
Okay.
That's really the big thing. Also, the fact that this cast includes the likes of Kaylee Spaney,
Yeah.
which is a very interesting choice. Really, it is that Alien tag. And at the same time, maybe it's also because I've kind of warmed up to something like Alien Covenant over the last few years. I still don't like Prometheus all that much, but I have warmed up to Alien Covenant, and I do know that this film does not have any ties to those Ridley Scott films that he did as of late. This is meant to be a new beast. I think it's meant to take place in between the first Alien and James Cameron's Aliens. But I find such excitement when a new Alien film comes out, regardless of if it's going to be good or not. So this is purely an anticipatory pick, and not me thinking that this is going to be a genuinely great sci-fi flick. It might not be. It might not be. I just know it's one that I'm really looking forward to. Just the idea of going to the theater, getting in line, buying my ticket, and going to see a new Alien film. That idea just really excites me. So if we're talking about movies that I'm anticipating for that reason, then yeah, I have to talk about it. I genuinely have to.
Okay.
So that's why. And like I said, I trust that Fede Alvarez as a horror technician. Like I said, I think the Alien franchise suits him. I think he could fit well with this world. So I'm genuinely curious to see what that's going to look like.
Okay. You and I could not be further apart on this.
You're not looking forward to this at all.
Nope.
Wow.
Not at all. And for the same reasons. It's because of the Alien tag. And that is unfortunate because those first 2 Alien films, Alien and Aliens respectively, are masterpieces in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Aliens 3. Borderline love it. Flaws and all. It is more flawed for sure, but I really like it a lot. The rest of the franchise, I could do without for sure, but especially the films we've got in the last 10 years, I could not be more disengaged with this franchise. The Prometheus films, do not like at all. Covenant,
Yeah, I know.
We would never do this because I don't have the energy to engage in this activity. But if you said to me, hey, let's do a top 10. Let's talk about the 10 movies in the InSession film era that we dislike the most, I would make room for Covenant.
I want to hit you so much.
I would. I think it's that bad. I think it's that bad. Completely disingenuous. Hates its audience. Does not trust its audience.
And I love that about the film. I agree with you, and I love that about the film.
Like, it's a film that
it's so mean. I love that.
Does not like you and is not inviting you to engage with the film at all. It's just this complete bloated, contrived movie that has absolutely no value whatsoever. Now, I will say this. Now, where you and I will meet in the middle here is Fede Alvarez. I agree with you. I'm not looking forward to this because of Alvarez. It has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with our beloved Ridley Scott, as we talked about earlier, and how he's completely ruined the franchise for me. But I do like Alvarez. I agree with you. Kaylee Spaney was a nominee for me at the InSession Film Awards for Best Actress.
Yeah, she won for me.
She was great in that film.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing her, do more features and being in these big movies like this. I'm not repelled from Romulus because of Spaney, the cast of Alvarez. It has everything to do with the alien tag. That alone makes me want to vomit. These days. These days. Now, if you asked me in 1995, I would agree with you. I'd be exactly arguable.
And that's
We're
the thing.
going back to Alien.
I'm
Yes,
still
sign me up.
there. I'm still there. It's like I was so excited for Prometheus when it came out. Didn't like it. Still don't like it. I was still so excited for Alien Covenant, despite my dislike for Prometheus. Didn't like Alien Covenant when I first saw it. Have slowly warmed up on it more as time has gone on. But it doesn't matter. The fact that if this saga went the route of Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, I would still be genuinely excited for any Alien film regardless. It doesn't matter. And it's simply because I think that first film is one of the top 5 greatest movies ever made. Like that, I love this world. I think the world is so fascinating. And if anything, maybe why I get excited for it is while I am warming up to Covenant as time goes on, I am excited to see fresh blood take on this franchise. It's the same reason why I'm kind of curious about this Alien TV show that FX is working on with Noah Hawley. Like I'm very curious to see what that's going to look like because it has new blood behind the camera. And I think Fede Alvarez, as a grotesque filmmaker as he is, can really visualize it in a way that we haven't seen before. So if there's anything that's going to trump it, it is the Fede Alvarez of it all. And that really does.
I am setting myself up for one of the best and biggest surprises of the year for me. There's no doubt about it.
I can't wait to have the conversation on this movie and see where I don't know where it's going to go. I could be proven wrong. I could be the one proven wrong on this, and I can walk away thinking that is the worst Alien film we've ever seen.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
Let me reiterate: I have nothing against Alvarez. He probably will make something respectable, maybe even great out of Romulus. I don't know. When we're talking about anticipatory, right now, because of what Ridley Scott did to the franchise, and even going back to Resurrections, the term alien, like the franchise, has disengaged me to the point where I hear it and I am completely and utterly apathetic. Don't care. Just honestly truly don't care. And look, I think this is a little funny, maybe a bit ironic, because earlier we talked about art and sports and the crossover of that with award season.
Sure.
In some ways, I envy Brendan here because he is treating this like a sports fan. And
I am. I genuinely am.
I do envy that to some degree.
They're aliens might any lines for this world right now.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, it's like my Detroit Lions, who have been awful forever and ever and ever. And I've stayed a fan all these years later. I read a stat, and sorry to take us down this rabbit hole, but to emphasize my point as a Lions fan, on national TV tonight, okay, they opened the broadcast. They opened with this, Brendan, by saying, if you're 65 years and younger, think about that. 65 years and younger.
Yeah.
The Detroit Lions have won one playoff game in your lifetime.
That's amazing.
65 years.
Absolutely insane.
One. That franchise is miserable. So if anyone has a claim to a franchise in misery, it is me. I know it. I feel it. I understand it. So from that perspective, I totally see where you're coming from.
Basically, what you're saying is Alien Romulus could potentially be the Detroit Lions of the Alien franchise.
Exactly. The Detroit Lions this year that's made the playoffs, that went 12-4 and won the division.
Maybe it's not a coincidence that they're winning this year because Alien Romulus is going to be great.
Maybe that will be the narrative. So who knows? I would love that.
Me too.
I would love
and maybe that's why it's in my top 5, because if this movie is genuinely great, that's going to be an exciting feat. Like just the idea of an Alien film being as great as it is. And let me also say this. Like I've warmed up on Alien Covenant over the years, certainly more than you, right?
Way more than me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
If
still
anything,
don't.
I have that film has lessened
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in
That's
my
one of our
opinion.
few times we've gone separate ways, very literally. Now let me also say I still don't think Alien Covenant is a great film. Like it still has a lot of problems. Alien and Aliens are the great films in this franchise. With Alien 3 has great things in it, though. I can't say it's a great film, but there are still great things in it. But the idea of an Alien film being full on great once again is the anticipatory angle that's pushing this film.
And that's
up for me.
fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. And look, if I looked at it in a vacuum, just that prism alone,
Yeah.
I do agree with you for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm totally there. It's like having hope in the Detroit Lions after 10 losing seasons in a row. Are they really going to turn it around? I don't see any hope for that future, but who knows?
Yeah.
As this year's Lions team proved, there is hope, it turns out.
I will say the one thing that does worry me about Alien Romulus, it's the fact that Ridley Scott has seen it and said it's effing great.
That's true. That is true. So who knows? But yes, look, the Lions hired a great coach a few years ago and he turned it around. They hired a great director here in Alvarez.
Yeah.
And they got a new great quarterback in Kaylee Spaney.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a part of me that wants to hope.
The recipe is there.
The recipe is there, but I've seen so many losing seasons from this franchise. And recently they've been at their very worst. So I don't know, but I'd love to be surprised. I'd love to be around when they start scoring touchdowns again and winning games. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the trajectory of Romulus this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that. And that's the anticipatory angle for sure.
Which would make for a fun conversation when we get to
Oh
that,
yeah, I
between
can't
you
wait
and
to review it because I'm really excited to see how this movie turns out. This I might eat my words based on how this movie comes out. Like I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
All right, my next pick here is a JD special. This won't likely be on anyone else's top 5 most anticipated films of the year. But let me circle back to 2015. Can we do some story time here?
Yeah, if we must. Sure, go ahead.
So let's go back to 2015. There was a movie that Brendan and I saw together in the theater. And it took me back to my childhood. Okay. And it took me back to these lessons that for some reason I had never really thought of before. I don't really know why. It seems obvious in hindsight, but I had never really thought about it as deeply and profoundly as this film does.
Okay.
And in addition to that, at the time, so when this film came out, I was just off the heels of realizing how this thematic undercurrent had actually had a tangible impact on my life. Tangibly. I could see it. It was right there. I could feel it. So at the time, it became my favorite film of that year, of 2015.
Oh my God. I think I know where you're going with this, and I'm genuinely shocked.
Yeah. So my favorite film of 2015 was Inside Out.
Yeah.
So here we are, nearly a decade later, not quite, but almost. And we're getting a sequel to Inside Out with joy and sadness and those characters coming back. And I'm honestly, it's funny, I didn't really think about it in these terms, but this film sits here at my, what are we on, number 4?
We're number 4, yeah.
Number 4.
I am like the way you reacted to me, including Alien Romulus, is the way I'm internalizing you, including Inside Out too. Like I am genuinely shocked this is on your list.
Yeah, this is here for really a lot of the same reasons and the anticipatory of it. It comes off the heels of my deep love for Inside Out. I don't know where your reaction is coming from. Part of my surprise is that over the years, you and I have talked about the Alien films and not the greatest of lights. Even Covenant, when it first came out, we both trashed that film here on the show. It wasn't until recent years where you came around a little bit.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of an alien film showing up in this conversation was an out of bounds, thinking. I never even crossed my mind. However, and I'll let you speak to it here in a moment, I guess. But yeah, Inside Out was a film that profoundly moved me. That whole idea of experiencing sadness and that being this transformative element that leads directly to joy on the other side. Like how those things are tethered together is something that I never really thought too much of in my life. But because of where I was in 2015, I had literally just experienced that. Just experienced that. So that film just gutted me in this incredible way. And then also I think about the mechanics of it, the psychology of it, I think is so intuitive and clever, and its world building is simply something we had never really seen before. It's just one of the most brilliant movies, animated or otherwise, that I've ever seen. So it's my favorite Pixar film to date. I love it. It has one of the best scores of the last decade as well. And I can't say enough about Amy Poehler and Phyllis Smith. I love their vocal performances so much. I nominated them at the InSession Film Awards that year. I think they were Oscar worthy. I think they're that great, especially Phyllis Smith. And it's, you couple that with Andy Serkis and mocap, and it's just one of those great examples of why those performances should be considered at the Oscars. And we just haven't gotten there yet, but hopefully one day we will. So I love that film to death. I don't really know anything about Inside Out 2. I don't know where it's going to go. All I know is that they're introducing more emotions as Riley is becoming a teenager. And look, that makes a lot of sense when your hormones of that age, they start to develop and your emotions start to expand. It totally makes a lot of sense. So on paper, I think there's a lot to mine there. We'll see how it turns out. But for those reasons alone, I had to have it on this list.
Yeah, what shocks me is, if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, JD, but this was the perspective I had when this movie was first announced, even before we got any trailer or poster or promotional material for it. We would talk about this in our collective text chain back when Ryan and Jay were still part of the show. You were the cynic of this movie even existing in the first place.
No.
And I recall you even saying things like, don't need a sequel, that's a crap idea, or something like that. And that's why I'm genuinely shocked, because I felt like you, and we haven't really talked about this film, so perhaps it's my own ignorance for knowing that you have maybe gotten a bit more excited about it as time has gone on. But I guess I assumed, perhaps wrongfully, that you still kind of maintain that same, I guess, feeling on the mere existence of this film even coming out.
I still very much feel the same. I don't think we need a sequel. I don't. But
that's amazing. So we do think alike. The fact that we pick similar films for our respective number 4 picks for similar reasons, right?
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, we're the same people.
If it was up to me, there would never be a sequel to Inside Out. I don't think we need one. But since we are getting it, I want to be open-minded to it, especially because of my reaction to the first one, as I noted. And I do think, at least fundamentally, it does make sense, because your emotions do evolve and they do expand, especially once you get into adolescence and start becoming a teenager. I think on paper, there's logic there that you can expand on. How they go about doing that is up in the air. We'll see.
Yeah.
But because of my reaction to the first one, I had to at least have it here on this list.
Okay.
I'm at least extremely curious. I am excited. I am dubious that it'll be as good as the first one. I don't think that we'll get there. But in terms of anticipatory, yes, that's very high for me.
As we're talking, I do want to look up something, because there is one thing that will get me to join the ranks in feeling excited for this movie. Okay, so it looks like there hasn't been a composer revealed or selected for this film, because if it ends up being Michael Giacchino returning for this film, then weirdly, I'll be all in. I will be all in.
Yeah, no, I think they would be. I guess I don't want to be harsh about it, but I think there would be a huge missed opportunity if they decide to go somewhere else. I think you have to have Giacchino come back. You have to. It's there. No questions asked. It has to come back.
Yeah.
I'm also curious though, because this is a different director this time around. Obviously, this is Kelsey Mann directing this, and while she's been with Pixar for some time and has, you know, been a story supervisor on some other films, this is her first directorial effort, kind of leading a team on a film. So I don't know what to expect there with her, but that makes me curious and excited, and you know how she taps into Riley's emotional fortitude all the more. Yeah, I'm very curious. But yes, I do agree with you. One of those pivotal moments is Giacchino or Elemis, excuse me. Like he has to come back.
Yeah, he does. So. He really does. I'm definitely curious about this film. I'm not quite at that level of anticipation like you are, but once we get new updates about the film, whether Giacchino is coming back, if we get more marketing material that actually genuinely excites me, that might be enough to pull me in. I'm not there yet. I still have a dubious kind of sensation about it. And maybe I'll be surprised because Pixar has surprised us a few times over the years. Like I thought Turning Red looked kind of lame and that movie ended up being really good. I thought Luca looked fairly passable and that ended up being a top 5 Pixar film for me. Yeah. So like they're at this stage where they're starting to experiment with their form a little bit. And if they continue that trend with Inside Out 2, I think that'll be really exciting. So we'll see.
And there's also an addition to it as well with the cast and Maya Hawke voicing Anxiety. And I love Maya Hawke.
That's a good casting. Yeah.
In addition to the cast that's coming back, you get her as well. So that addition I think is really great. And yeah, I am with you. I don't think this film will be as good as the first film. To what degree, I don't know yet. There is a level of dubiousness, especially with any sequels. But I'm hoping that this is more Toy Story 2 than it is Cars 2.
I don't think it'll be Cars 2. Nothing is Cars 2.
Okay, but you know, when we're looking at that spectrum, because if it's closer to Toy Story 2, then that's fine. It doesn't have to reach the same heights as the first. Like if it's still great on its own terms, I mean, I'll take that as a huge win for this film.
If it ends up being Toy Story 2, then that means I'll like it more than its predecessor, which I doubt will happen. But yeah, it's we'll see what happens. I'm really curious though.
Yes, we'll see what happens. All right, number 3, what do you got?
Number 3, I almost tempted myself to not include because apparently this film has been delayed indefinitely. I don't even know if it's coming out in 2024.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. If we do get it at some point this year, I do want to at least have it reflected on this list. It's a filmmaker that's reflected right now in your background, JD. You've got a Blu-ray of Parasite behind you. Bong Joon-ho has a new film coming out potentially this year called Mickey 17.
Yep.
So that's my number 3 right now. There's a lot of mystery around this film. I don't even know what it's about. Apparently it's based on a novel, which I obviously have not read. The cast here is stacked. Robert Pattinson, Mark Ruffalo, Steven Yeun, Toni Collette, Steve Park, Naomi Eki. There's a lot of great talent on screen already. The thing that got me most excited, and it's something that probably shouldn't get me excited about the film because it's perhaps not even true, but part of the reason why this film was delayed indefinitely was due to I think a lot of it had to do with the SAG strikes and some of the touch-ups that the film needed that it wasn't able to make its release.
Gotcha.
But I think there were also some talk and some speculation that the film was very, very poorly received during test screenings. And if that's the case, if that's true, which I don't think it is, but if that's true, yeah, count me in. I'm excited for this now because when that happens, that means we've potentially got like another Annihilation on our hands.
Yeah.
And so weirdly, I didn't think about putting this on the list because I don't even know if it's coming out this year. If it's delayed indefinitely, then we don't know.
Yeah.
But if it truly was delayed because it received very poor test screenings, to me, that's usually a sign I'm gonna dig it.
Yeah.
So, at least in the case of science fiction, this specific genre, that usually means it's something very bold and daring that's not suited for general audiences. And that's at least my anticipation here, which is why I at least wanted to recognize it here.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions on this,
Mhm.
and this is rhetorical because we don't really know.
Yeah.
But I want to know why you're hiring Bong Joon-ho if you wanted something safe and mediocre or something that you can sell. Because let's be honest, Parasite isn't something that you can sell in a conventional way.
It's
That
not.
film is wild, okay? It's absolutely insane.
I mean, what the safest movie that Bong Joon-ho has ever done is maybe Snowpiercer, but even
And
that,
still that's a little
even that is kind of a devastating movie in a lot of ways, kind of a cynical movie too. Like that's got a
Yeah.
boldness to it, and I love Snowpiercer. I think that's one of his better films, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So if this falls into that same line, then yeah, I'm probably gonna dig the hell out of Mickey 17.
Absolutely. Now, I know Warner Brothers didn't produce this. They're
Right.
distributing this. However, when they, got into this, maybe I'd have to look into it though, to be honest, because I don't know if one of their subsidiaries did produce it. That could be, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I do know that they're the ones behind this though. They're the ones that took it off the schedule
Yeah.
for all of these reasons. Whatever the mechanics of that look like, we know that they have their hands in the cookie jar. And did they put their hands in the cookie jar knowing what they were getting themselves into? And again,
If that's true, then that's just dumb.
well, but here's the other thing. Warner Brothers, the last few years, not exactly the smartest knives in the drawer. We've seen that come to fruition, right? Like
Fair.
their executive board are making decisions that are utterly baffling.
Yeah.
They are taking L's left and right. And this could be another one of those. If you are getting into bed with Bong Joon-ho, you know what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
So did you expect test screenings to go well? Like A pluses across the board? Like
No,
No.
if anything, you would probably want to be more excited for a divided response for a movie like this.
Yeah.
At least you would hope that that would be the case because that's probably the intent of the film. I just again, I don't know how true that report on the test screenings is because a lot of times that's always just a falseness. Because a lot of times when
that could be a false thing to
well, because a lot of times when test screenings happen, you don't really know what the response is because it's meant to be held in private. Like those opinions of general audiences that partake in those test screenings are not really allowed to talk about those things. So when we hear reports about them, you kind of always have to take it with a small grain of salt.
Yes. Yes.
Which is why in a weird way, I'm kind of like contradicting myself by feeling excited about the film because of a report that probably isn't even true in the first place. But it does maybe prove my point on why I'm always excited for a Bong Joon-ho film. Because he does not make safe films. He does not make some, especially in the sci-fi setting, he's going to challenge people.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Even if that report isn't, like, they don't have the sources to validate the report, do we really believe that the responses to that film leaned one way or the other? Of course they're split. It's Bong Joon-ho. It's going to be uneven. You don't even have to do a test screening. You already know that's the case.
This same report happened when Alex Garland made Annihilation. Like, again, I don't know how true that was, but apparently that was a film that was in danger of being recut to be a bit safer for general audiences, and Garland pushed back on that.
Thank God he did.
Thank God he did, because if that's the movie that divided audiences and pissed people off in test screenings, that's the movie I wanted. So if that's evidence of anything, then I'm using that as evidence to support why I'm excited for Mickey 17.
Yeah, especially if the test screening audience is the general public. I don't have any context to that. I don't really know. What if they grouped a bunch of cinephiles who love Bong Joon-ho, and that was the response? That might give a little bit more weight to the response, but we're assuming that's not the case.
Do you think?
I'm assuming that's not.
Do you think maybe, if anything, this was maybe Warner Brothers not wanting to compete with themselves, because this was originally slated for late March of 2024 this year. And that almost conflicts with another sci-fi epic coming around the same time, Dune Part 2. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe they just didn't want some internal competition in that way.
I don't know. What I read was that they slated this film for March because they wanted the date. It was never intended, speaking of Mickey 17, it was never intended to come out in March. They wanted that date for Godzilla versus Kong.
That's right.
But they couldn't commit to it because they needed to make sure they could have that film ready in time.
So this movie was just a placeholder or a bookmark for Godzilla X Kong.
A placeholder. And so I think the announcement of it being on the shelves indefinitely, if I'm being optimistic, I think that's just a way for them to finish the film, whatever the strike, however that impacted the finishing of it.
Yeah.
They probably just need to reshoot whatever they need to and finish editing the movie, get to post-production, and then hopefully we can still get it by the end of the year. I would think that's the plan, but the caveat to that is, again, it is Warner Brothers.
That's true.
And who knows if Zaslav is just going to be like, you know what? This feels like a tax issue.
He's going to do that to someone who just won Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Picture at the Academy Awards not too long ago.
Yeah.
What a silly man.
What a silly buffoon, if that's the case. I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of people lining up to work with you if you're going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be the case, but Zaslav has done that twice, so who knows? Or maybe they'll just throw it up on, I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll see, but I am with you. This is number 8 on my list.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it as well.
Cool.
All right. Number 3 for me, this feels a little basic, but when Francis Ford Coppola is making a movie, you have to talk about it. So let's talk about Megalopolis.
I have no idea what to expect with this beast.
I don't know either.
The existence of it just seems hilarious at this point now.
Yes. And that's the thing. Like, you have a legendary filmmaker coming back for the first time in quite a long time. This is a little bit of that Steve McQueen cake thing where it's like, Francis Ford Coppola's coming back? Enough said.
Yeah.
Here's my money. Kind of thing. It stars Adam Driver. I'm going to go see it twice. I don't care how good it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see it. Like, Coppola and Adam Driver, you have one of the best directors to ever do it. And one of, if not the best actor of his generation today, combining to make this film. Alongside Forrest Whitaker and Lawrence Fishburne, Aubrey Plaza, Jason Schwartzman, Shia LaBeouf is in this film. Like, it has a really extensive cast.
It does,
and it's being described as this epic science fiction drama. I'm all in. I know Coppola hasn't done anything of note in a long time, but it's Francis Ford Coppola. He's coming back with a movie. And if this is, I'm very much reaching. This is a huge stretch. I might hurt myself here. Yeah. But if it's anything like what we're seeing with Scorsese in his legacy era, if Coppola is tapping into that in any way, shape, or form, I'm there. I'm going to be there. I don't know if that's what this is going to be. Maybe it'll just be a great film from a legendary filmmaker. Maybe that's all it'll be. Who knows? But I'm very, very curious.
So this is my number 6. And specifically, this is my number 6 in the list that doesn't disqualify those films we already talked about at the beginning of this, right?
Yeah.
So movies like The End or The Bike Riders, like if we're still considering that criteria and I'm not including those films, then Megalopolis is my number 6. The reason why I have this as high as I do, and I'm with you, it reminds me of when Francis Ford Coppola would do the one for me, one for you game. He would make a film for himself like Apocalypse Now or One from the Heart, and would just completely bankrupt himself, that he would then have to be a director for hire to fund his next personal project, which would then be something like Bram Stoker's Dracula. And those films that he would always do for himself, a lot of, like, Apocalypse Now, I think, is his masterpiece. Like, I know that might be a bit hot takey to say, but that is my favorite film that he has ever done. And One for the Heart is not a great film, but nothing else looks like it. that is a
Yeah.
masterpiece as far as a visual experience. And I
Yeah.
could say the same thing about Bram Stoker's Dracula, although I think that's actually a really interesting movie as well. Like,
Yeah.
he has made some of his most interesting movies when he plays that game.
Yeah.
And Megalopolis sounds like it's another one of those films.
Yeah.
And which is interesting to say because he hasn't really done the director for hire game for a while either. But it feels like so many years have been building towards this. This feels like a passion project for him, which means
Yeah.
it's going to be something that we haven't seen before, like from anyone.
Yeah.
It's going to feel very different, and that's going to be interesting.
And not even feels, it is a passion project for him. This is something
Yeah.
he's talked about in the past, going back to the early 80s. He's talked about this. There was an interview he did where, to your point, he made Bram Stoker's Dracula, Jack, and the Rainmaker. He did those to get out of debt to fund this film, to fund Megalopolis. He did table reads with actors going back to 2001. So this has been on his mind for a long time.
That's why when he continued making films, even in the 2000s and late 2000s, they were kind of on the cheap. Movies like Tetro or Twix, right? Tetro, I actually think is a fascinating movie. Twix, not so much. Regardless, but he had to take a step back in order to not bankrupt himself for this movie. Like that's why his trajectory as a filmmaker is so, in my opinion, kind of underappreciated. Because even some of those director for hire films in the 80s, like Tucker, the movie Tucker with Jeff Bridges, it's a really charming movie. That's a really good movie. He continues to make interesting movies, even despite the trajectory and the fact that he is the man that made The Godfather. If we disregard that, he is still a very interesting filmmaker.
I agree. And I think that's why, regardless of how this plays out, there's a fascinating documentary to be made about the making of this film.
Oh, yeah, that's probably already being discussed and made.
I'm sure. I'm sure, because not only is it the whole passion project of it all and going back to the 80s and thinking about this, but then in 2007, he completely abandons the project for whatever reason. Cannot get it made, or is having troubles he can't overcome. But then through consuming other art, books, movies, he gets inspired again and decides, you know what? In 2019, I'm going to do this. I am going to pick it back up and do it again, leading us to where we are now. It's just like, that's an artist being inspired by art to create a work of art. And what if it's great? That would just make the documentary all the more fascinating, and the story all the more fascinating. But either way,
his own personal Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that alone has to get you excited, right? Like,
I'm with you. You.
Francis Ford Coppola coming back for the first time in God knows how long, 20 years.
Too long. Way too long.
Way too long.
It almost made my list for those exact reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So number 2, we're on to number 2.
Number 2 is a film that has already been seen by a lot of people. In fact, I actually thought we were going to get it last year, but I guess we're getting it this year. I forget which festival circuit it premiered at. I don't know if it was Cannes or not, but we have a new Richard Linklater movie coming out.
We do. Yes,
Hitman, baby. Hitman.
Yeah.
With the great Glenn Powell. He has worked with Linklater before in Everybody Wants Some, which I think he should have been nominated for a Best Acting or Best Supporting Actor nomination for that. But yeah, he apparently co-wrote this film with Linklater. And all I'm hearing is that this is a genuinely hilarious and charming and funny hitman comedy from one of the greatest, if not the greatest, beauty in the mundane directors. Someone that just relishes in no conflict or no plot, really, and to see that kind of approach within the hitman genre, I don't know what to expect with this thing. All I know is that we've heard great things thus far, and I'm kind of at a point now where if Glenn Powell's in a movie, I'm gonna go see it. Like, he's just got that movie stardom quality that I feel like we as audiences tend to gravitate towards, especially me. Like, he's just got that charm that I just always find interesting to watch. And from what I've heard so far about this film is that it's apparently quite good, and that his chemistry with I don't know if I'm going to pronounce her name right, but Adria Arjona, I think is potentially going to be quite electric, is what I've heard from people. So yeah, Hitman, Richard Linklater. I'm always excited for a Linklater film, regardless, and the fact that he's playing with genre a little bit is even more exciting for me. So yeah, I've got this at number 2, pretty high for me.
This one is not surprising. That it's on your
No, this is
list.
a Brendan pick through and through, right?
Yeah, but it's number 7 on my list as well. I am completely and wholeheartedly there with you. I'm very much looking forward to this as well. Yes, the Richard Linklater of it all, but as you're talking about, the Glenn Powell of it all, and not just him in front of the camera, but writing the screenplay as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's enough for me. That's enough for me. And then to add on to it, as you're talking about, it's gotten pretty great reviews at the festival run. So yeah, inject this into my veins. When is this coming out? I need it to come to me as fast as possible.
I don't even think there's a date yet.
Yeah, I don't think there is actually. Yeah, because I was doing some research and I feel like some people have noted that like right now I think Netflix has picked it up, but there's no release date yet.
Right.
I think
I don't think so. But I think we're definitely getting it this year. I feel like we can guarantee that. The fact that it's done and it's been premiered, it's like it's been seen by critics already. So we know it exists and we know it's done. Yeah.
My guess is Netflix is trying to figure out if this is something that can go beyond just streaming numbers. Could this have some sort of awards run? And I don't know. I haven't seen the film, but my guess is they're trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, they're strategizing for sure.
But yeah, very much looking forward to that. My number 2, Kirsten Johnson.
Oh, she's coming back, isn't she?
She's coming back. She's got a new film called Sontag. And what's interesting to me about this is that it is a drama / documentary. It's a little bit of both. It stars Kirsten Johnson writing and directing this, and it stars Kristen Stewart in front of the camera.
You have a Kirsten and then a Kristen. So
my 2 favorites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your 2 favorite stins.
Exactly. And this is following the events of the life of Susan Sontag, this influential writer and intellectual. And while I don't know much about Susan Sontag myself, going back to anticipatory, the 2-layer cakes of the stins, as Brendan denoted, that's really all I need. Okay. Kirsten Johnson, if you're not familiar with her work, I feel like you need to. Dick Johnson is Dead is one of the best documentaries of not just this decade, because that came out in 2020, I believe, right? Or did
That's
that come
correct.
out previously?
That was my favorite favorite film of that year as well.
Yeah, but it's one of the best documentaries of the 21st century so far. I would
agree.
Even go that far.
I would agree.
And I think Camera Person in 2016 is also excellent. One of the best films of that year.
Yeah, agree.
She's a really great documentarian. And from what I have gathered with this film, it will be a drama, a feature drama, but will have documentary-esque elements to it. So it seems as if she's writing this film with, Kristen Stewart portraying the character. And we've seen Kristen Stewart in recent years portray real characters or real life people, I should say, in these really fascinating ways. So you have those 2 great artists collabing and creating this hybrid of feature drama and documentary together. I don't know what that entails, but my imagination is spinning like crazy, and I cannot stop thinking about this movie. Cannot stop thinking about it. Yeah. So so it's really high on my list. I have this at number 2. I cannot wait to see this movie.
That idea and that approach kind of sounds like something we talked about when we reviewed Ava DuVernay's Origin, right? Maybe it almost sounds like what Kirsten Johnson is doing is more of a literal embodiment.
I was going to say, it might be a little bit more literal than what Ava DuVernay was doing, but similar-ish kind of things.
Yeah. The only reason why this didn't get as high on my list is because, admittedly, like you said, I'm just not that familiar with Susan Sontag as a person and her story. So I didn't know enough about it to give it that edge. But Kirsten Johnson, as far as a filmmaker is concerned, regardless of just her films being documentaries thus far, she's 2 for 2. like she's batting 1,000, like maybe even more so than batting 1,000, because I do think Dick Johnson Is Dead is one of the best films of the 21st century. It's in the running for me as one of the best films of this particular decade thus far. Anything she has coming up, I am excited for.
I agree. And honestly, I don't think Camera Person's that far behind. Like, as far as
I love that film a lot
documentarian
too.
goes,
Yeah.
In of the last 2 decades, I mean, there aren't many that are doing it better than her.
No, I'm with you.
And
I'm with you.
to see her now collaborating with Kristen Stewart is more than enough for me. So
yeah, sounds like a good fit. Her talents, I think, would fit well with a director like Kirsten Johnson, and like trying to convey something really experimental in a way. Like she would certainly be up for that challenge.
I agree. All right, number 1. What do you got at number 1?
It'd be funny if we have the same number 1, but I don't think we will. I think we'll have some disparity here. Not disparity in the form of a disagreement. We just may have different picks. But talking about Kirsten Johnson and her batting 1,000, there's another filmmaker that has been batting 1,000 for me, and his 4th film comes out this year. That's Robert Eggers. And Nosferatu, his take on Nosferatu apparently comes out on Christmas this year. That's my most anticipated film of the year, simply because every time Eggers has made a film, it's been in my top 10 of the year. The Lighthouse just missed, but in hindsight, it probably was in my top 10 as I think about it further. And The Northman, that movie rocks.
Yes,
Like if anyone is gonna do another take on Nosferatu, or like this particular iteration of Dracula, right? This is so in Robert Eggers' wheelhouse. It's honestly kind of hilarious, right? Like it's hilarious. It almost seems unfair. Like there's no one else that should even bother to make this movie other than Robert Eggers. So given that, the fact that he's finally making this, and this is apparently another one of those films that's like a dream project for its respective director, in the same way that we talked about Megalopolis and Francis Ford Coppola. This was apparently a really big, passionate project for Robert Eggers, and he's finally making it happen. Just the still images alone of what we're getting in pre-production is enough to sign me on board. It really is. And the cast looks great. You've got Willem Dafoe making an appearance once again. Ralph Ineson is basically like the go-to, like, creepy guy for all A24 horror and Robert Eggers material nowadays. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp. Good cast, good filmmaker that I trust every single time he makes a film. He kind of knocks it out every time. So just given the trajectory alone, I think I'm going to love this. And I don't want to go in with expectations, but the fact that I think I'm going to love this, I feel obligated to put this at number 1, because I genuinely think it's going to be great. I really do.
I am with you. This is number 6 on my list.
Okay.
I'm very excited for it. I don't know what else to add. It's Robert Eggers. The guy is a master. I've loved every single thing that he does, and this looks absolutely mesmerizing to me.
Yeah.
Love this cast. The marketing so far has been great. This film, in terms of pure adrenaline and pure excitement, this is one of my most anticipated of the year for sure. I have some curiosities that I've talked about as in terms of my previous list. But if we're just talking about pure adrenaline, like, I cannot wait to see this. I need to see it tomorrow. Top 3 of the year. No doubt about it. I cannot wait to see this movie.
Yeah, it looks great.
My number 1, though, is not only the film I'm most curious about, but it is also the one that I have the most adrenaline for. So it covers both of those spectrums for me. That's my boy, Terrence Malick, The Way of the Wind.
Okay, well, here's the first question. Is it genuinely coming out this year? Or are we going to wait like another 7 years?
I don't look. This could be one of those everything, everywhere, all at once's kind of thing where I had it in my top 10, and then 5 years later it finally came out.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm hoping that this comes out this year, which is why I have it at number 1. A lot of other writers that I've, when I scoured the internet doing some research, there is a lot of hope that this film is coming out, but it's Terrence Malick, so you never know. You never know. But assuming that this film does come out this year, oh my God. Again, the Terrence Malick of it all alone. He's one of my very favorite filmmakers working right now. Top 3, hands down. The Tree of Life is in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah.
Just a director that I adore, immensely adore. And the one thing that we have talked about on this show incessantly, we did a Terrence Malick movie series a few years ago where we went through all of his movies.
So many 5-star masterpieces.
So many 5-star masterpieces. We've, of course, covered some of them in real time since we started InSession Film in 2013.
Yeah.
And the one motif that you can sense in all of his movies in one way or another is this spiritualism that he invokes into his movies. And here we have a movie directly about Jesus. Okay. So he is tapping into that spirituality in a very literal way with Jesus Christ as your central character. And do you know who's playing Satan?
Oh, that if there's one thing that has me most excited about this movie is the fact that Mark Rylance is playing Satan.
Yeah. That little detail alone would have it at my number one, let alone everything else that I've already talked about here. But yeah, this is a film that retells and chronicles several episodes in the life of Jesus, him directly confronting Satan, I assume, given that Mark Rylance is high up there on the billing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that alone, I cannot wait for Mark Rylance to start a monologue, and 3 seconds into it, the camera just pans to Jesus off in the distance.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. Okay, it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait to see it. Matty Schoenaerts in the film, among others. But yeah, it's Terrence Malick directly tackling the spiritualism that has defined him over the course of 30, 40 years he's been doing movies. So yeah, there's no other film that tops this for me.
Yeah. The thing is, if any other filmmaker who had a spiritual sense to their films would then go make a movie about Christ, I would be worried that just sounds like, okay, that's way too literal. That's way too literal of an approach, given the fact that you're already working with spirituality. Mm-hmm. But if that person is Terrence Malick, then okay, I trust you. I trust you. This is, where do I have this ranked in my list? I think I have this at like number 8, somewhere around there. So it is one I am looking forward to. I guess I only didn't put it higher because I don't even know why. I just, in true Terrence Malick fashion, we know nothing about it other than that plot synopsis you talked about. We probably won't get a trailer until it comes out in like a month, right?
But doesn't this have the Fabelmans written all over it, though? Like, this is very much in that vein. Like, Steven Spielberg, defined by his parents' divorce, and he throws that into all of his movies. Terrence Malick has done that with his faith. That spiritualism.
I was going to say that
very well be his Fabelmans.
I was going to say it even sounds a lot more like Martin Scorsese's current legacy era, and how ironic that Scorsese's next film is going to be a Jesus film. So, I mean, now correct me if I'm wrong. This Martin Scorsese film, this quote unquote 80-minute Jesus film, that's not coming out this year. At least there's no confirmation of that. Yeah. But wouldn't that be funny if two masters were making movies about Christ in the same year?
Yeah.
And they ended up being the two best movies of the year competing for that major award.
We'll see. That would be hilarious, but also wouldn't surprise me. Like,
both
of those filmmakers are defined by their faith in some way.
That would be really interesting, right?
To see them tackle that artistically, I think is going to be really compelling. I do agree with you. There are times where these filmmakers, when they tackle their inspiration so on the nose, maybe that doesn't benefit them. But I think in this case it will, because he's clearly been wrestling with his faith for a long time. It's all over his movies. And to see him directly tackle it, I think will be great. I'm very much looking forward to it. And I also want to note, because I somehow didn't mention this earlier, and forgive me, I don't know how to say his name exactly, but it stars Giza Rohrig as Jesus himself, and he was the lead actor. Most people would know him, at least here in the United States, for the film Son of Saul, which was nominated. Did it win for Best Foreign Language Film that year? I can't recall.
I'll have to double check.
I know it was nominated.
It was definitely
at least
nominated
for that category, and he was the lead actor of that film. So so he's great. I don't know if I've seen anything else that he's done since Son of Saul, to my own ignorance, but
that film is an Oscar winner, and I'm trying to load the page to see if it was for Best Foreign Language Film, but most likely it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course he was the lead of that film. He was very, very good in that movie. And this will be the first time that I've seen him since Son of Saul. I know he's done a few other films, but nothing that I've seen since that film. So, yeah. So
And this film has a
excited to see him in
stacked
this film.
cast. It's a stacked cast as well. You mentioned Mark Rylance. We're also talking, the Son of Saul connection there too. But you also have Ben Kingsley. You have Joseph Fiennes, Douglas Booth, John Rhys Davies rather. Looks like Franz Rogowski is also in this as well.
Oh, I don't know if I knew that.
I'm looking at the IMDb.
That's really exciting.
So now this fully solidifies your this is not even number one. This is like in the negative category because it
like
surpasses
nothing
number
comes
one.
Close. Okay.
All right, you know what? I'm raising this on my list. This is officially my number 7. I'll say that.
Oh, it also stars Leela Hatami, who was very well known for A Separation back in 2010.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh. Yes, I'm all in. I'm 1,000% in. Easily my number 1.
And if anything, given what Malik just did with a movie like A Hidden Life, he's back on track. He's back on track for sure.
Yeah. All right. Any other honorable mentions you want to make? I know we're going kind of long. I was hoping that we'd have more time for honorable mentions, but we've gone a little long here. But
yeah,
what else should we mention?
I guess we'll just quickly name films, kind of quick, like just almost off the fly here. But a few films that were rounding out my 10 most anticipated with this current criteria. I'm genuinely curious about this Twister sequel, Twisters.
Oh yeah, I as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Given the director, Lee Isaac Chung, just the rural landscapes of Minari, I actually think would translate well to this kind of world.
Yeah.
And the cast is stacked, so I'm genuinely curious about that. Anytime a new M. Night Shyamalan film is coming out, I'm genuinely excited. So his new film, Trap, I know nothing about it outside of Josh Hartnett being in it. So that's exciting. This movie called Spaceman with Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler?
Yeah. I guess, isn't there also a new Paul Schrader film coming out? Oh, Canada?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Oh, Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. There's a new film from David Cronenberg, The Shrouds. The new film from Luca Guadagnino, Challengers. We saw a great poster for that. A Quiet Place Day One, which has a really good director tied to it, Michael Sarnowski, who did Pig. There's this Western epic from Kevin Costner called Horizon, an American saga that I'm genuinely curious about. I'm also very interested in this new Beverly Hills Cop film, Axel Foley. I like that first one at the very least. I think it's a lot of fun. New film from Rose Glass, Love Lies Bleeding, looks really interesting. Drive-Away Dolls from Ethan Coen.
Yep.
We're finally getting Beetlejuice 2, whatever the heck it's going to be called.
Yeah.
I hope it's not called Beetlejuice 2. I think that movie should be called cleverly something like Beetlejuice, or something like that.
To Beetle, to Juice.
To Beetle, to Juice, that's even better. Oh. So that's up there. I'll stop there because I know you have a few you want to mention as well, but those are some other ones that I thought about that I'm genuinely excited about.
Yeah, so you mentioned Challengers, just to round out my 10, because I mentioned Nosferatu, Hitman, Mickey 17 were in my 6 through 10. At number 9, I had Challengers. And then at number 10, I don't know how to pronounce it in French, so forgive me, but the translation to English is It's Not Me from Leos Carax.
Oh, he is
who I
one
love
coming out.
and adore.
Yeah.
So that would be at my number 10. But let me emphasize, though, on a true list, my number 2 right behind The Way of the Wind is Joshua Oppenheimer's The End.
That's probably my number 1 on a true list.
Yeah, those Oppenheimer and Malick, and then everything else you can debate.
Yeah.
But it's certainly those two for sure. And as we noted last year, not only is Oppenheimer coming back, and if you haven't seen his documentaries, you need to go and watch them. But
They are
The End
special films.
is also a musical. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that he's jumping right into musicals, a very different form of storytelling, although you can really see the seeds of how he can make that jump given the craft and everything we see in his documentaries.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fascinating. As far as some others, of course, the Bike Riders, Jeff Nichols, absolutely love him and very much looking forward to that. Maxine, Ty West, cannot wait to see that one. Did you mention the Sean Baker film?
No, I did not. I forgot about
Nora
that.
is supposed to come out this year as well. Looking forward to that. Olavier Assayas has a new film, Suspended Time. That sounds really interesting. I'm much higher on this film than you. I understand why it's not on your list, but one that I'm really looking forward to. Although I sort of feel about it the same as Inside Out. I don't think this is necessary, but since it's coming out and I loved the first one, consider me excited. And that's David Robert Mitchell's They Follow. Curious how he follows up his first one.
Clever.
The actor from Duke Johnson. I didn't like Anomalisa as much as you did, but it's still a really good, fascinating film, and he's one of the co-creators of that animated film.
Yeah.
Jim Jarmusch has a new film, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, that's coming out. Did you mention Joe Talbot has a new film, The Governess, is coming out this year?
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but that was one that I didn't get a chance to mention in my honorable mentions. But it is one I am thinking about. That is a very fascinating plot synopsis, given how different it seems from The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. That's why it didn't crack my top 10, but given my love for The Last Black Man in San Francisco, I'm still curious, very curious to see how that turns out. Mike Lee has a new film called Hard Truths. Looking forward to that. David Michaud has a new film called Wizards. I'm curious for that one as well. David Mackenzie is a name we haven't really heard from in some time.
I like him.
I like him. You know, that Netflix film he did a few years ago wasn't super great, but he's a filmmaker that I overall really, really like. So he has a new film coming out that I'm really curious about. One that I probably should have mentioned already, I know I got a ton of tweets about this, is Rose Glass's Love Lies Bleeding.
Yep.
With Kristen Stewart, of course. What else do we have here? Na Hong Jim, the director of The Wailing, excuse me for butchering that, but he has a new film called Hope, and The Wailing was such a huge film a few years ago, so I at least wanted to mention that. There's a movie coming out called Holland, Michigan.
That sounds like it's your thing.
That's my thing. So,
that's your thing. Yeah,
very much looking forward to getting into that one. There's a new Soda Pop this year.
Oh,
Steven
yeah.
Soderbergh. It feels a little bit like what was that experimental film he did like in 2017 with the iPhone? What was the name of that?
Oh, Unsane?
Unsane. Yeah, like from what I've read, it's kind of in the vein of that.
Okay.
So curious.
Which I was mixed on that film, honestly. So I mean, I don't know. I like his experimentation, regardless of what kind of genre he's playing with.
Absolutely. I'm curious about the Bob Marley film that's coming out kind of soon. It looks intriguing. I'll be especially curious to hear your thoughts on it and the musicality of that film. Nia DaCosta has a new film called Hedda coming out. And just to prepare everybody, there is a Soaker to Joker. So whatever you need to do to prepare, get ready.
I don't even want to know what people have to do to prepare for that one. Kind of scares me, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, the last one I also want to mention too is Jeremy Saulnier, who I don't think we've heard from him in a while, but he has a new film called Rebel Ridge coming out this year.
I like him. I like him a lot based on what I've seen, because I've only seen those 3 films thus far of his. I mean, I think he's done 4 films, but I haven't seen Murder Party, I think it's called. But yeah, of the 3 major films, especially a movie like Green Room, that movie rocks. Yeah, absolutely rocks.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I also, real quickly, I feel like it would be remiss if we didn't mention Furiosa. I know you and I debated the trailer there.
I'm still looking forward to the film. Yeah.
Yeah, it is one that we're still very much looking forward to. So I wanted to throw that out there. I don't know what to think of this Mufasa movie that's coming out, The Lion King.
I'm so I'm with you. I was gonna say curious, but does that make it sound like I'm actually excited for it? Because I genuinely don't know. I'm excited for anything Barry Jenkins is gonna do.
Yeah,
I like the idea of what he's trying to do with this, but the fact that it is still technically a sequel or somehow tied to that 2019 Lion King film, that's the thing that scares me.
I will say this, though, because earlier we talked about Francis Ford Coppola, the whole do one for you, do one for me thing. This is him doing one for them so he can fund his next movie, I'm assuming. Yeah. But he fought for this. Yeah. Like, he really wanted to do this. This isn't like a director for hire kind of situation. Right. Like, he really wanted to do this. So that gives me some hope. Even though I don't know what to think of it. I don't know what to make of it. But if he was inspired to do it and fought for it and Disney said, yes, go ahead. Okay, that intrigues me. You don't always get that in the one for you, one for me scenario.
Especially in the big world like that, the big Disney world, especially for those properties.
Exactly.
So I am curious about that. That is definitely one of the big movies that we haven't mentioned yet. There are a few big movies that we haven't really acknowledged.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out kind of soon.
Yeah, I have.
I don't know.
I don't want to say doubt. I don't want to say doubts. But given what I've seen from Wes Ball as a filmmaker thus far with those Maze Runner films, I gotta admit I'm not terribly impressed by him. And the fact that he's now the one being tapped to direct a Legend of Zelda movie, it's gonna depend on this Planet of the Apes film in a lot of ways.
I will say this. I enjoyed the Maze Runner movies for what they are. Like if he was doing those kind of films, I wouldn't mind that. I would sign up for him to do whatever the next phase of Maze Runner is, or whatever the next adaptation of a novel that he wants to do along those lines. But Planet of the Apes, especially coming off that trilogy, I don't know. I mean,
maybe he's evolving. Maybe he's evolving, and maybe we'll be surprised. I would love to be surprised. I'm not sold just yet.
Yeah.
As far as another big film, this is one of these few years where I feel like we're not really getting any superhero movies. I mean, aside from Deadpool 3. I mean, is there anything else? Am I missing anything? Like that's really weird.
I think this is going. Well, there is Kraven the Hunter.
Oh yeah. That. Oh, and there's also Madam Web, which comes out pretty soon too.
It's not going to be the
That's
best.
Not a real movie. That's not a real
movies.
movie. That is not a real movie.
We need to really hope Deadpool 3 lands because that's the only thing Marvel has aside from its TV shows.
Yeah, and I haven't been hearing the greatest of things about Echo. I have not watched it yet, so
I've watched the first 2 episodes. I think it's okay.
Okay.
Like the grounded character stuff, I think is great. The larger MCU of it all is a little uneven, but I'm only 2 episodes in. I can't really fully judge it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, Deadpool 3 is the only film they have. Madam Web is going to be a disaster, and I don't know about Kraven the Hunter. Doesn't look all that great. So who knows?
Just so unfortunate because I love what I've seen thus far from J.C. Chandor as a filmmaker. Yeah. So, that's unfortunate if that ends up being the case.
I know. I hope to be wrong, though. That could be good. But that's all the more reason to maybe be excited about an Alien Romulus because that's going to be so against the grain from the norm over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Really want Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to land.
Yeah.
There's Bad Boys 4, which I will subjectively love regardless of how bad it is.
And it's the same team that did Bad Boys for Life, so I trust them, right? They need a win after getting Batgirl taken away from them.
I know, exactly. That's a really great point. And then selfishly, with animated films being so distinct this last year with Spider-Verse and Boy and the Heron, Disney and Pixar out of the discussion. And I don't think that this will live up to any sort of Spider-Verse level of artistry. But if, I could see it maybe outdoing a Pixar or a Disney is Transformers 1.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to get an animated Transformers movie. We haven't had one of those in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to. In addition,
2024 is going to be busy.
Yeah, and we do get Venom 3 this year as well. I think.
I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I love Tom Hardy as that character. I don't care. Okay. Yeah. So 2024, I'm really curious. I think, to me, just looking at it on paper, it has a very different feel than 23.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna have its own unique flavors. We'll see how it lives up to the greatness of 23.
I'm looking forward to that.
So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wind down. I know we've gone a little long here. So thanks to everyone for sticking with us here to the end. Just want to plug once again the award show, episode 567, parts 1 and 2. They're both up right now for you to listen to. Part 1 is the awards part. Best director, cinematography, acting, all that sort of stuff. And part 2 is our top 10 movies of the year. So please go and check all of that out. Chasing the Gold is up from this last week with Brian Rowe and Joey Gentili. We will have a new Women in Session coming out this week as well. I haven't got to that yet as we're recording this, but it should be up early in the week. And I think that'll be it. And we'll finally move into 2024. We'll get some
campaign
reviews coming
begins
soon. Yep.
The campaign begins.
It
And I think one of
does.
those first reviews will be something that we technically counted as 2023, right? Because I know we wanted to talk about Wim Wenders' new film, Perfect Days.
Yeah, so
I
we'll
don't
at least get to
yeah,
that, maybe a few
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Brendan and I will talk about it because right now the only film to maybe talk about is The Beekeeper. I don't know if you and I really want to get into that or not, but
I mean, I kind of do, but I also kind of don't. I want David Ayer to have a win. I really do.
I do. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. So we'll see. There's also the Jake Johnson film on Hulu that I haven't seen
Yeah.
yet, but I love Jake Johnson. There's a really nice review for it on our website at InSessionFilm.com. So perhaps that's one we could do if we're looking for films to see and review. I love Jake Johnson, and he directed that movie.
That's
Which is
true.
also interesting. I don't know if how many he's directed before.
That is a good question.
I don't know if he directed that one on Netflix, the gambling one that he did. Did he?
I'm
direct
looking this up. Nope. Self-Reliance is his directorial debut.
that? It is his debut. Okay, so there
Yeah.
you go.
Written and directed by Jake Johnson.
Okay,
So
looking.
he's
forward
playing
to
the
getting into that.
he's playing the outdoor game.
Yeah, and I love that because I love Jake Johnson. He's one of my favorites. So
Yeah.
at the very least, I think I'll give that a go and definitely watch it. So. At any rate, that'll do it for this week's show. Be sure to subscribe to the show if you're watching here on YouTube, like the video, all that fun stuff. You can listen on Apple Podcast or Spotify, rate and review us there as well. You can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. I think that'll be it. Do you have any final thoughts on anything before we get out of here?
I think that will close the books on 2023 as we work into 2024. We'll just reiterate once again, 2023, an all-timer. It's an all-timer of a year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thanks everyone for walking through that year with us,
Yeah.
2023. It was a lot of fun. We can't wait for 2024 as well as we turn the page here. So with that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Love a new Malik. Can't wait.
Directors rock.